How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Omaha Outlook. It's me, Luke Meyer, and I'm here with Duncan Helms. We're going
Hello.
to be continuing our top 25 series preview. Today, we're on teams 10 through 6, so we're just about finished on that. And obviously, we're going to try and get the 1 through 5 team review out relatively soon. With that being said, just due to some schedule restrictions and such, it may have a little bit of a difficult time going over a lot of the games for, I guess, the opening weekend
Yep.
and such. We'll definitely try and get some sort of review out there as far as actually, some series that we find interesting, maybe some predictions for the opening series. We may not be able to hit that just given our current constraint on time, but we'll definitely have to see how it goes from there. And it's really a shame because initially, you and I both thought that there was
Yeah, I
not
didn't
really going to
expect
be many
anyone really
great
good to be
games, and then
playing each
we,
other.
yeah, usually I feel like most opening weekends, it's whatever, you get your Floridas versus your, I don't know, your like Georgia
Pensacola State.
Polytechnical Institute. Yeah, like it's some random.
Did
And
you
I
say
look on there
Georgia
and there's like,
Technical Institute?
no, Georgia Polytechnical
Oh, I
Institute.
thought you said Georgia Technical Institute. I was like, that's actually Georgia Tech, right?
No, like
Okay.
Polytechnical, just some random directional school, whatever. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
usually it's just whatever. And we look on the matchups. It's always like three top 25 teams just in one tournament and stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's
obviously
kind of like
we'll
a
have a lot to
college
review.
basketball feel of like, hey, there's like these random tournaments that are just like very good teams playing each other. It's a big start to the season. I think don't set this in stone, but I think the general plan is we're going to try to have our preview for the week coming out on Thursdays or so, and then have our recap for the week either coming out depending on how many good West Coast games there are. We might be able to do it Sundays, but after that, it probably would have to be pushed back to Tuesdays that we record. So sometime there in the week, late Tuesday, early Wednesday, that episode will be going up. But obviously, this is all subject to change. I don't know if anyone who's watching this knows this, but we I think we set a record with views on our last video with a whole 28. So
Yeah, there we go.
we don't
We have
exactly. This is
14x
not a
my
full time job.
expectations.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
not a full time job for us. So we don't really have the time to just be like, yeah, we'll have it out Monday at 9 a.m. But
we
that'd
make
be that'd
bad.
be the dream.
We do bad analysis for love of the game. It's not because the check. We just
Yeah,
plain
just for the
simple.
love of the game. We just get out here and
Well, and
talk
for
shit
sure.
about teams for no reason.
And so I think one of the things is too for this series to keep in mind. This isn't necessarily like a predictions and such like that. This is more of just like a feeling out for, I guess, some just teams, just kind of going through, seeing what we like, and highlighting a few key players that we find really interesting on each team,
Hmm.
and especially towards we get to the top of the list. Just because we say a team isn't, I guess, as good as they were. Duncan is
So
containing his laughter.
yeah,
Maybe just because we say a team isn't, I guess, quote unquote, as impressive. It's entirely relative.
yeah.
I mean, any of these teams that we're going to be mentioning in this series are certainly impressive baseball teams,
Oh my goodness, yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So
So
it's more to that point. Like, just for one thing, if I say a player isn't very good, or like I'm not impressed by a player, that does not mean they're not a good baseball player. That just means from what I read in probably 15 minutes of research on that guy, I wasn't impressed. Now, in 15 minutes of research, it's like to impress me, it's like especially when we're talking about 25 top 25 teams, this goes for the teams as well. For a team to impress me, they have to be really really good. And if we're talking about a team within the top 15, even within the top 25, I'm measuring them by the other teams that we're talking about. And if I go, yeah, this team has a lot of questions, I'm not impressed. Does that mean they're one of the worst teams in their conference? No. They're still probably one of the five best teams in their conference in a really good conference. I'm just not impressed.
Duncan's a hater.
I clearly,
Um,
if you read the few comments we have, I'm the worst person on the planet, and I hate their team specifically.
Duncan does. We'll touch on that.
Yeah, it's
We'll go ahead and get on into it. We've yapped on for long enough.
yes, this
So
is the
I'll be starting
longest
off
intro we've
today.
had.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Well, we have number 10, Florida, up here at first. As we said in the intro, I'm not sure if we did say, but I'll be covering the even teams. Duncan will be
Yeah.
covering the odd teams. So today I have number 10, number 8, number 6. Obviously, Duncan has 9 and 7.
Yep.
So that being said, the reasons why we had to delay this episode coming on out was just because we went back and we rewatched some of the video and such. We weren't terribly satisfied with the Florida portion. It didn't come out terribly well, and that came down onto me. I just didn't present the, I guess, the team very well and such. So we wanted to really go back and be able to re-record it and do that team justice. We figured it wasn't fair to do at least have some level of expectations for the other 24 teams, and then all of a sudden drop the ball randomly on Florida. So just want to come back and try and touch base with them and just, try and do the Gators justice. So
Yeah. I am incredibly hard on Luke, and I didn't think he was ready.
we were actually, I think one of the reasons I started stumbling is because whenever we were on Discord, Duncan actually started screen sharing of like satellite images of my home. It threw me off. Yeah, it kind of threw me off. You would understand as to why that would throw almost anybody off. But anyways, so let's go ahead and get into to Florida here. So the Florida Gators, do you know, guys? Last year they went 36-30 and went 13-17 in the SEC. So obviously, for a team that went as far as they did, the record may not be nearly as, I guess indicative of that per se, because they were one of the last teams that kind of made it on into the tournament. They actually ended up going all the way to the World Series semifinals before they lost to Texas A&M. Oh, I thought you were going to say something there.
Oh no, I mean LSU actually just had. All I was thinking about was LSU actually had the same record in SEC play, 13-17.
Really?
Yep.
I see. Okay. So, anyways, just kind of last little thing about Coach Kevin O'Sullivan. He's been there for quite a while, I believe 17 seasons and such. So he's been kind of a staple of that program. And he's led them through very good times. It's been a very successful program pretty much that entire time span there. So,
yeah.
I mean, even winning a national championship in 2017, which obviously that's a pretty doggone big deal. So.
Oh, yeah. And 16 straight regionals. I mean, he's been there 17 seasons. His first season, they didn't make it. Every year since, they've been to or hosted a regional. Incredible.
Oh, yeah. They are definitely one of the pinnacles, at least, of 21st century kind of success in college baseball.
Absolutely.
This is one of the programs that you definitely look at for. So, obviously, just kind of looking back at last year's team, the biggest question mark, Jack Caglione. How did the Gators survive in a post-Caglione world? As you know, that Jack Caglione hit approximately 1.3 billion home runs and also pitched 2 billion innings for this team. And so he was valuable on multiple sides of the ball. It's one of those things. Is how is Florida going to be able to really get back going in the post-Caglione era?
Yeah. I mean, I think the actual number for homers, for those who might not know, 35 homers, 1419 OPS. I mean, and then we talk about pitching. He started 16 games and threw 73 and 2/3. I mean, yeah.
Hey, do you have his ERA up while we're sitting
his ERA actually wasn't super impressive. It was 4.76, and
really?
his WHIP was 1.5. So, I mean, you're still losing a good starter that can go out and get you length. So, it's not necessarily his impact on the offensive side, like the same as his impact on the offensive side, but it is still good and a big piece for a team to lose, especially when you think about how electric his stuff was.
Oh, for sure. And I think there's one thing is that Florida last year was actually last in the conference in ERA and such. So even though it's a 4.6, that's actually better than the team average. It was like 6.05 or something like that. So he was still a positive contributor from there. So anyways, that's going to be the biggest question for Florida. But for everything I've seen here, obviously they don't have another, I guess, Caglione lined up for them that I can see. However, they seem like they're going to be pretty good hands. So just kind of looking at the projected lineups that we have here. 5 of the projected starters had double-digit homers last year. So this is once again a team that's going to be returning a lot of juice in their bats. A lot of these guys, we got one guy with 20 home runs. All the rest are in the teens. And so it's going to be a team that once again is just going to be able just to take that ball 400 feet whenever they would like, really. I think last year they hit 136 homers as a team. So I feel like maybe that's kind of becoming a trend for Florida is,
Yeah.
maybe not like a quote unquote live and die by the long ball, but a team who builds their identity on being able to hit that ball, hit it well, and hit it far.
Oh yeah. And I mean, even the transfers you look at, um, I'm sure you're going to talk about these guys in a couple of minutes, but low plate appearances still hit 7 homers, and the one with high plate appearances is a center fielder that stole 24 bases with a
There we go.
452 on base. So
For sure, for sure. All right, and so I guess one thing is with that much power, if you look up and down this lineup, this is a pretty strikeout heavy team here.
yes,
And that's one thing that is a little bit of a concern for me is only, I guess, one player is going to be having more walks than strikeouts, and the rest of them, the gap is pretty dang big from there. So, like, for instance, their catcher last year, Luke Heyman, he had 23 walks to 74 strikeouts on the year, and that's kind of a similar rate for most other players on this team. And so that's going to be one thing that'll be really interesting is that if Florida can lower the strikeout numbers down, I feel like that might not a make or break, but could really, I guess, impact whether they're going to be hosting, whether they're going to be how far they're going to make it, anything like that. Because obviously, a lot with these home run heavy teams, there's going to be a lot of strikeouts to go along with it. I think if
yep,
Florida really wants to get up to the next level and really be able to say, hey, we don't just want to make it to Omaha, we want to win in Omaha and such, I
yep.
feel like the strikeout numbers are going to have to come down a bit, or the walks are going to have to go up. It's going to have to be one of the two.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you talk about a great example of a team that, and this is me going back to basketball, but a great example of a team that, you know, really leaned into one thing is like the 2019 Rockets, that like era of the James Harden Rockets. We're talking about 5 out spacing, small ball, shooting threes. It's kind of close of approximation to a homer. I mean, you're just going for it all every time. Um, and occasionally, that team can make the Western Conference Finals. They can go to Omaha. They can play really well. Um, Sometimes you go 0 for 27 and you just miss all your shots. It doesn't happen for you. And part of the problem with a team like this, especially when you get into the postseason, you're talking about late into Omaha, late like super regionals later. Even the regionals, obviously, it's some of the best teams in the country, but or the not some of the best teams in the country.
Oh yeah.
You're facing the best pitching. You're going to get the best out of everybody, even the guys that maybe didn't have a good year on the mound. They're going to come out. They're going to give you every single thing they have to move on. Because if you lose, you're done pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a team that strikes out like this, sometimes that can be a detriment in those later stages, and even in SEC play. I mean, that could contribute to why they were a below 500 team in the SEC last year and had to play their way into Omaha in the SEC tournament. Now, sometimes you're just going to hit homers, and sometimes you don't. And that's kind of the problem with a team like this. Going back to what I was talking about with Duke, actually, we've broken the timeline, so I don't actually know when I talked about Duke, but I believe it was the previous episode. They lost a good few home run hitters. One of them, I believe, went to one of the teams that we were talking about, and I think it was Georgia. They transferred to. I think, could be wrong, but
That sounds right.
yeah. But this is a team that hit a ton of homers, and now with a few less home run heavy guys, a few more on base guys, you could be talking about a team that's set up more for postseason play than a team like Florida. That's the only hole I could poke in a power team like this, and it's not a very big hole because
Oh,
this
for
team
sure.
is
And
still very good.
yeah, yeah. And let's take this back a bit. This is not us saying that Florida's not even going to make it out their own
Oh
region
my
by any means.
goodness,
Oh yeah,
no.
of course not. That's not what we're saying by any means. One thing we're saying though is that a lot of these teams that integrate, I guess, the home run into so much of their philosophy, they have run into problems in the postseason. And I know that the biggest piece of evidence that people are going to, I guess, quote unquote, throw back in our face is that Tennessee last year
Oh
led the country in a billion
yeah.
home runs for sure. And so, and this thing, it's not an impossibility for sure, but sometimes the stars just have to line a little bit more for these teams. But
Mm-hmm.
especially though, if you get these teams that get red hot, like Florida with this potential, if they get red hot in the postseason, oh, they're going to be a nightmare to deal with,
Oh,
100%.
for
So
sure, for sure.
that's not us sitting here saying that Florida is bad. They don't. No, they don't deserve the number 10. Whatever. No, no, no. That's not what
No,
we're saying. We're
not at
saying that
all.
this team has enough juice in their bats to go out there and kind of do whatever they want. It's just going
Yep,
to be
it's gonna be a
sometimes that
question.
long ball isn't going to fall.
Sometimes
So,
you run into Texas A&M and you get blanked.
mm,
That's pretty much long and short. That's the hole I can poke in this team. I mean, from oh my goodness, I had a point to make and I'm losing it. But
oh, this guy. We're going to
this
re-record
okay,
too.
this is sorry, I remembered. When we get up to this range, I talked about. I think I actually legitimately talked about this in the same episode that this is for, just later.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
when we get up to this point, and we start like, oh, this part about this team I don't necessarily like. That is so incredibly different than saying the team is bad. That's us looking at it and going, well, yeah, clearly this team is really good. This is what could go wrong. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you are an elite team, it's the survivorship bias. I don't really care. I do care what makes the team very good. We love that. But I want to see what's wrong with them so that we can say, okay, what do they need to improve or fix or whatever? Because, when you get to the highest levels, you got to be pretty much perfect or incredibly, incredibly lucky. And it's better to be perfect because then you don't have to rely on anything but yourself.
Oh, for sure. And I think too, a lot of things that we may say, it's relative, obviously. Once we get
Yes.
up to this level of the rankings and such, and we say, oh, this isn't very good. It's not that it's bad
Mm-hmm.
by any means for the rest of the country. We're just saying because now we're in the range of teams that are going to be favored into going to Omaha. They're
Yes.
favored. They're going to be up there for the national championship winning thing. So
Yep.
once you say, oh, I'm not as terribly impressed per se by like one of their pitchers, let's say I'm not terribly impressed by them, that's obviously relative in a vacuum. I think
Yes.
I'm sure, a tremendous pitcher and such, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying within the context of saying, hey, this is one of the teams that has a very good chance of being in Omaha. They have a very solid chance of going in there, win the national championship. It's within that context and such. So keep that in mind whenever we're reviewing these.
For sure. And this is like I said, we're in the top 10 now. All of these teams, if they live up to their expectation, should at least be in supers at
Mm-hmm.
minimum. These are teams,
Oh, for
8
sure.
of these teams should be in the College World Series. They should be in Omaha. Now, will that happen? No. No, it will not.
Oh, yeah.
But their expectation is Omaha.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, it's not as simple as take top 18, whatever. But yeah,
Yeah,
to your point, that's exactly what it is. That these are the teams that going into it, these are what people believe. If you had to pick 8 teams to make a Omaha, these would be the 8 and such.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
anyways, us go ahead and get into a little bit of the players we've yapped on. I'm sure we probably just restated everything. We're probably going to stay 20 minutes from now.
Yep.
However, like we this is a few days after recording. It's our first opportunity to really record. So,
Yeah.
uh, anyways, the last one of the guys I want to get to, Blake Sear. Sear Sire. I believe it's Sear.
I think we fell on Sear.
I think we did fall on Sear, and I looked it up days ago when we initially had it. So
I
I'm
can
pretty
pull
sure
it.
that's
Go
what it
ahead.
said.
Keep talking. I'll pull it up.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, so he had fairly limited action last year. He really only had about 117 plate appearances on the year. His averages and such were 284 batting average, 397 on base, and 537 slug. So certainly not bad numbers and such. They're very solid. He had a 119 WRC plus, and I think one thing is that he had a little bit better of a year coming in as a freshman. So in 2023, oh, I forgot to say, he transfers in from Miami.
Mm-hmm.
He goes from Miami back up to Florida. And so within his freshman year at Miami, his overall averages were 305 batting, 427 on base, and 620 slug.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously a little bit better of numbers. And just put that in a frame of reference here. His WRC plus, which WRC plus, for those of you who don't know, is an advanced analytic that helps, I guess, evaluate batters based off of league average. So league average is always 100. If
Mm-hmm.
someone has 110 WRC plus, that means they're 10% better than league average. If they have a WRC plus of 90, that means they're 10% worse than league average. So,
Yep.
for instance, when I say that in 2023 he has a 141 WRC plus, means he's 41% better than league average.
Yeah.
So
Which is
compare that to
elite.
2024. Oh, what are you saying?
That's elite. Also, it is Sear. We were right.
Okay, okay. And then if you compare that into his WRC plus from his 2024 limited campaign, it's 119. So there was a bit of a drop off there. During his freshman year in Miami, he was actually a freshman All American.
Hmm.
And so I think, let me double check up his conference numbers, because if I'm not mistaken, one positive sign from last year is that he struggled a little bit in conference play relative to his overall averages. His freshman year, sophomore year, it looks like he didn't. He actually sped up a little bit. He had a 129 WRC plus in conference play. So it's actually,
Okay.
he performed a little bit better. So I think that may show a little bit of the maturation of this hitter.
Hmm.
So I think that could be a sign of good things to come for sure.
For sure.
Uh, and kind of looking at his batted ball profile, last thing I'll really touch on him is that he's a pretty dang balanced hitter. Actually hits a lot of line drives, especially in conference play. He hits 26.5% line drives. We see most guys hover around the 20% plus or minus two. So, but outside of that, honestly, he hits pretty even. He's not a super fly ball heavy, super ground ball heavy. I mean, he's just overall a very balanced hitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great guy to have as a corner outfielder. He's going into his third year. I mean, looks like he didn't play too much last year, so
Hmm.
I don't have his stats pulled up right now, but yeah, it's a good bat to have as a corner outfielder. It's what you look for pretty much, and like I said, he hit 7 homers in only 117 plate appearances. That's a, that's big power.
Oh, for sure. Um, and yeah, just kind of looking at a little bit like I said with this Florida team, his K percentage is about 23%, which is a touch high, but he also drew 13.7% or 13.7% of the time he drew a walk as well. So
Yeah.
at least you have some decent walk numbers to back that up. But
Hmm.
that's kind of going to be a theme for this whole team. It's like, hey man, look, if they can really get these strikeouts down, then
Yeah.
be in a very good spot.
Yeah. I mean,
So
going back to Heyman, like you were talking about, I mean, he hit 16 homers and 14 doubles. You'd expect his slugging to be well above 500, but because he struck out 74 times, and I'm assuming he really didn't hit many singles from the look of his stats, his slugging was only 41. His on base was 340. I mean, we're talking about two guys on this team had an on base of over 400 last year, and that kind of feeds into the problem of it gets hard to create runs when you're not hitting the long ball.
for sure. So to go a little bit into their pitching, we haven't really talked much about their pitching and such. They don't have a bad stat by any means. I think they have a fairly solid one, albeit unproven one. But I think the talent is plenty. I think I actually have here in my notes that all of their starters were highly ranked out of high school. I think the worst one was just out of the top 100 or something. So these guys
Really?
certainly have the talent
Wow.
to be, and take that with a grain of salt because that's from my memory from I guess like 5 6 days ago.
I
So
believe you.
yeah, yeah. So this certainly is a talented team, and I think the main guy I want to home in on here is Liam Peterson. He's projected to be their Friday guy. This is somebody Florida fans are really big on. They seem to think that he's going to be one of the next guys up, and I think that given last year, given the team struggle, that they were last in ERA, that they realized that hey, look, we got to have somebody to go out there and just deal, absolutely deal, and that I think that's who they believe they have in Liam Peterson. So he was a
Yeah.
freshman last year, and just to give me a little bit of his stats here is that he had a 6.18 ERA. Out of 17 appearances, he started 15 games. So as a freshman, he was asked to take on a good bit of the bulk load here. Obviously, he only pitched about 62 innings, which, like I said, for a freshman is a fairly impressive mark. But given the context of, I guess, the lack of, I guess, pitching from last year,
Hmm.
kind of makes a little bit more sense. But
Yeah.
that's not to say that I know what you're probably thinking. The 6.18 ERA, that's not very good and such. But I think I have it in my notes here that he settles down towards a bit of the end of last season, and he actually had a
Really?
five start stretch where he put up 2.55 ERA across
Oh.
24 and two thirds innings.
Okay.
So this guy's got stuff for sure.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think that backs it up when it comes into his Sierra because this Sierra actually likes him. And so for those of you, I guess, who aren't as familiar, Sierra is skill interactive, earned run average. Pretty much all it does is that it takes into account whether like somebody hits a lot of, or I guess they generate a lot of ground balls, a lot of fly balls. think of it as like ERA, but you're also factoring in the level and quality of contact. The
Yep.
main way you want to read this is just read it like you would an ERA.
Yep.
So this guy's a 3.84 Sierra overall on the season.
Yeah.
So that kind of shows here that he has some solid stuff that would make you believe that that's a lot better than his ERA would indicate, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a good predictor in my mind. It's not the end all be all. I mean, just because a guy has a good Sierra doesn't mean he's going to go out and pitch well the next year. But it's a better predictor than something like ERA or even FIP, which is fielding independent pitching, which tries to take the defense behind the pitcher out of the equation and just say, what is this arm doing? Um, I used to love FIP. It's lost its shine to me in recent history, but Sierra I think is a good indicator of, hey, this guy might not have the best ERA. He might not have the best WHIP even, which is walks and hits per inning pitch, which is probably my favorite pitching stat. But Sierra is just a good way to say, hey, this is what we could potentially look for out of this guy. And I don't know if we want to break the time continuum even more and talk about his start on Friday. Um,
That's I'll leave that up to you on that end. We can, if you would like,
I
for this
mean,
one.
I just want to look at it for him. I just want to say it for him because I looked up his stats before you actually started talking about him because I was like, I thought I remembered he had a really, really good start Friday. Yeah, he did. He was playing Air Force, so Air Force is not the most insane competition, but Air Force is a good team. Um, in that start Friday night, he won 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, no runs, 11 strikeouts. This dude was dealing to start the year, which is that's nuts numbers. So far to start the year, his Sierra is negative 0.59. Now, I don't think it'll stay that, but it's looking good so far to start the year from him. Now, will it stay that way when we get into the tougher competition? Who knows? But he's looking pretty good.
And one thing is too, since the fourth wall is already down, there's a Saturday guy, Pierce Coppola, had an equally as impressive start. 5 innings,
Really?
1 hit allowed, 1 walk, and 12 strikeouts. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Is that this is an extraordinarily talented pitching staff, albeit unproven, and that's just really what it's going to come down to. Is that
Yeah.
if these guys can get it together, they're going to be in a very good spot. And I think that really kind of, and the reason why I wanted to focus on Liam Peterson specifically is because he embodies this very well. Is that Coach? I think Coach. Okay, I want to make sure I got O'Sullivan because I have an
O'Sullivan. Yeah.
O'Connor coming up,
Uh-oh.
and I wanted to make sure that I got it right. So I
It's not
got
Vitella?
O'Sullivan. Huh?
It's not Vitella?
Not quite. Um, so I'd be sweating there. Don't make me record this a third time. So what happens is that the coach really goes, hey, there's a lot of times he maybe had a lot of, I guess, just mental focus issues on the mound. And sometimes that somebody would get on base and would snowball from there. And I think that really kind of, I guess, is like a microcosm as the rest of the pitching staff is that
Yeah.
just a lack of experience, a lack of, I guess, just mental toughness. Because it's not that, I guess mental toughness is a bad term. It's a lack of being there and having been there. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier to get over something once you have been there. But
For
given the
sure.
fact, like I said, this guy was a freshman last year. There's going
Yeah.
to be struggles like this for sure. And given the lack of experience across the whole staff, I expect, there can be some growing pains for
For
certain.
sure. I mean, a good example of a guy who had all the talent in the world and just a guy would get on and it would just blow up. Braves fans will remember a few years back, Mike Fultonawich, Fulty. Um, he was a very good pitcher until he got a guy on base, and then he just turned into the worst. Like it would be you'd see him give up a hit, and it would just be like the world ended, and would forget how to pitch. He couldn't find his fastball. He couldn't find his off. He just lost all control. And you'd expect it would over time fix itself, and it didn't for him. But for this Florida staff, I mean, O'Sullivan's been there. He's done that. He's pitched. He's coached elite talent before. Coaching is going to be a theme in the next episode we're recording, the one we're about to break the fourth wall again, record right after this. But this is a staff who, I mean, obviously from the starts we just saw, they could really put it together this year if it's the one thing, and you know they're still young. They've got all the time in the world, so they look
For
good
sure.
to start the year.
Oh, for
They
sure.
look good in fall ball too.
No. Okay, so I guess we'll go back to the hitters. I guess we won't really harp on too much of the pitching from here on out, at least from the guys that I've listed. So let's go. Another guy I want to talk about is Colby Shelton. He's almost kind of in a similar camp to Blake's here. Is that relative to 2023, he had a little bit of a down year, or actually a good bit of a down year in 2024. So in 2023, he started at Alabama, and as a freshman, he batted 300, had a 419 on base and 729 slug
Woo!
for over an 1100 OPS,
Oh yeah.
WRC plus of 156.
Mm,
So I mean, yeah, no, he was
mm.
very good. He had a good bit of a slowdown in conference play, which, like you said, kind of a bit to be expected, at least from his 2023 campaign. And I believe even in his 2024, he slowed down a good bit, not to the extent that he did. So anyway, 2024, he goes from Alabama, he transfers over to Florida. Florida, he goes out there. Oh, I forgot to say this. 2023 Alabama, he hit 25 home runs. So I
Sheesh.
mean, yeah, no,
In
this
a
guy was
down
this good.
year.
No, no, no. That was his regular.
Oh, right, right,
That
right,
was
right, right.
his
It was the conference where
watermark
he
year.
went down. My bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyways, his 2024 Florida. My apologies. Now 254 batting average, 374 on base, 551 slug with 20 homers right there. So if you line that up, like his slugging dropped 150 points. You know, his batting average dropped 50 points. His on base percentage dropped quite a bit from there. So, and going back to WRC plus, looking at it overall, 156 WRC plus at Alabama his freshman year versus 115 WRC plus Florida the next year. This wasn't really a thing of plate appearances. He actually had more plate appearances in 2024. This to me just kind of shows that he had a little bit of a slump. However, this guy is insanely talented. Guys like this don't stay down for that long, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
that he's going to be one of the big factors in this Florida offense for sure. Just because, given the fact of it's the 20 homers and 254 batting average, that's really kind of, I guess, indicative for this team is that
Yeah.
it's showing a good amount of strikeouts, and it's also showing down here the 26.4 K percentage. I mean, he's striking out over a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
Maybe giving up a little bit of, I guess, contact for power for certain. So it's going to be interesting to see if he makes any adjustments for this game. Maybe he's not trying to hit for power, I guess, as much in this, or maybe he doubles down and goes, "Hey, look, I'm fine with batting around 260 as long as I'm tearing the cover off the ball." So,
Yeah.
like I said, it'll really just come down to whatever offensive identity they want to, I guess, embody going into the season.
Yeah. Speaking about that, was just looking at a few more stats from this weekend. I'm just going to use all the information we have at this point because why not? But they look like they're kind of moving not away from just hitting homers, but it is a thing that they obviously, like we said, Coach O'Sullivan's been there for a long time. He's been to a ton of postseasons. He knows what a team needs. And it seems like they are starting to like, hey, we know last year it was pretty much like we were pretty much just waiting for Jack to do something. We're just waiting for him to hit a bomb. Hopefully, a couple of guys get on base in front of him. We'll see what happens. And obviously, you're just waiting for something to leave the park pretty much all year. They had 14 stolen bases over 3 games this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
They had a bunch of guys with multiple hits. Again, it's Air Force. Air Force isn't the most insane competition. They don't have Paul Skeens anymore. It's
Uh,
it's going to be interesting to see how it translates, but it seems like they are making the effort to move away from just being that long ball team and be a more postseason ready offense.
for sure, and that's what kind of I'm looking at an article here. Coach O'Sullivan, that's what they immediately were talking to him about, just saying, "Hey, look, there's so many different ways his team could score," and that was one thing that he's really been proud of. He said, really harped on and such, and so
Mm-hmm.
he says the creativity and such for these lineups that he has, he could field whatever kind of lineup he wants. So
Yeah.
that really just kind of show you how deep this team is, especially at the offensive portion of the ball. And like you said, maybe who knows? They aren't just going to be hitting the home run. Maybe they will be a much
Yeah.
more dynamic offense this year. I think it's definitely a good sign. I don't want to overreact to 3 games of
For
baseball
sure.
for
For sure.
sure. So that's not what I mean. I'm not saying that by any means that their offensive identity has changed because of the 3 game first year. No, that's not what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Just saying that there's flashes of it, and it seems like based off of O'Sullivan's comments here that it's been a focus of his off in the off season.
Yeah.
So
Which
obviously he's a
makes
great coach.
complete
He knows
sense.
what he's
Yeah.
doing. So
Yeah.
you know.
For sure.
Yeah, so
All right.
pretty much that's all I have for the Colby Shelton there. Obviously, the only other thing I have is he hits a ton of fly balls. He hits about 46% fly balls last year. The previous year, he did 56%. I mean, he hits a ton of fly balls, and a lot of those go for home runs, obviously. So
Yeah. This is it's going to be a fun team to watch, and it's a top 10 SEC team. We expect them to have a ton of depth. We expect them to play well. The SEC is just really tough. You had former champ LSU go 13-17, Florida go 13-17, and then no disrespect to the other conferences, they did pretty dang good last year in the postseason. I mean, they lost one game to powerhouse Oklahoma State and then beat them in the next two. Then they beat Clemson in 2 games, and then they ran into Texas A&M. So it's going to be a very, very tough conference. I mean, when we're talking about 13-17, if we were talking about 13-17 in another conference that wasn't, the SEC or pretty much the ACC, you're probably not going to consider even making it to regionals.
mm-hmm.
But when we're talking about an SEC team, it's kind of like SEC basketball this year. You look at teams that don't necessarily have the best in conference. Oh my gosh, win loss.
Record.
Yes, record. Oh my god.
Yeah. Professional podcasters.
I know, dude. Yeah, I do this for a living. But yeah, you look at a team that doesn't necessarily have a good record in conference, and you look at how they might do elsewhere. They're probably going to make it to the postseason, and we'll just have to see how this all pans out for Florida.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely, most definitely. Last guy we really want to talk about here is Kyle Jones. Kyle Jones, I really want to hit on him. He's a transfer in from Stetson. Last year at Stetson, he had a very productive year. Batted 351, had a 456 on base percentage, 472 slug. His main reason I wanted to bring him up, though, and I think this is a great transfer in from Florida, is 33 walks and 28 strikeouts. He had he had more walks than he did strikeouts. And on top of that, he had 23 stolen bases. He was caught stealing 5 times. However, when you're a high volume base runner like this,
Yeah.
I mean, that it's going to happen. Obviously, you want to minimize that as much as you can. But the main thing that I'm looking at here is this walk percentage, his K percentage, and how many bases he's stealing. This is exactly what this Florida team needed.
Oh, yeah.
They needed somebody who say, hey, look, man, just go out there and get on base. If you get on base, we got enough guys with some decent power. We're going to bring you all the way around. So I think this is a great pickup from them.
Yep.
And he brings a lot more of the dynamic portions.
Yeah, and a guy who could potentially be there for a minute. He's just a sophomore this year.
Oh yeah.
I don't necessarily think he's going to be one of the guys that is like an MLB draft prospect immediately. He could absolutely turn into an incredible player, especially playing center field. We'll see, but he's a guy that could be around for a minute and be a real cornerstone to this Florida team for a few years now.
I agree with that. I agree with that entirely. I think that's I don't think that he'll be immediately heading on out by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean that again, we're talking about a guy who last year as a freshman slashed 349, 452, 467, and stole 23, 24 bases, and hit 5 homers. Like we're not talking about it like, oh yeah, he just, especially with NIL nowadays, you're a big school. You can probably pay this kid more than a 20th round pick would get. So, and especially a guy who'd be in the minors maybe for a minute. You
it's
can
certainly
move
it's certainly
anything
not
around.
us beating him over the head over his talent level.
No.
It's just that it's especially with a lineup like this, it's easy to get overlooked a ton,
Yes.
and so I could see that very easily happening. Him maybe not this year, maybe next year and such. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah.
but that's pretty much all I have for Florida. Is there anything else that you wanted to add for him?
No, I think I've interjected enough.
That's fair. That's fair. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video.
Yep.
We might sound a little repetitive, but like I said, a lot of it was just because that out of order or out of
Yeah.
orderness is the word I'll use,
Yeah.
of which we decided to record this and such.
Yep.
But hopefully that was a little bit better. It was certainly better than the initial recording we had. The initial
Yeah.
recording lasted all of 3 minutes, and it was
Yeah, I
that
think we
there
did
me
about
saying
10 times more about Florida this
uh
time.
yeah, that was pretty much a compilations of because and part of it was on me. I went out of order on my notes, and then second off, my tabs on my computer got
That did
reset, and so I
happen.
had that really tore me up because I have my tabs very specifically oriented, and
Yep.
then it just tore me up. So
Yeah, no.
I'll only take 10% of the blame. Not other
I'm
90% will go
90%.
to Convo.
I'm the reason we recorded. Nah. It's obviously we just want the best we can do out there. And we will get you back to your regularly scheduled programming. Number 9, Florida State. Last year went 49-17, 17-12, which was good enough for 5th in the ACC. They only lost 5 games outside of the ACC, which I think speaks to how good the ACC really is. Their coach Link Jarrett, 72-48 in 2 seasons, didn't make it to regionals his first year. Last year they made it, and they went to Omaha. If we go over here and I pull up the 24 College World Series, this is it. They made it to Omaha and lost to Tennessee in, I believe, 2 games. No, they actually only played 1. Interesting. Because Tennessee had not lost and Florida had. But, yeah, lost to Tennessee. Then in the ACC tournament before Omaha, they actually went to the championship and lost to the team last time, Duke. They had a very good postseason. Like I said, coming off not making it to regionals the year before, last year making it all the way to Omaha, making it all the way to the ACC championship. They'd love to see more. And the guy they expect to bring them a lot of that success is their ace and D1 baseball's number 1 starting pitcher of the preseason, Jamie Arnold. I mean, this guy is an MLB level arm. Like, he is
Immediately throwing around that comparison again.
dude. We're talking about.
I'm going to bring it up to it.
Okay, hear me out on this guy. Mid to high 90s fastball. He was touching 97. Mid 80s slider with a 41% whiff rate. And then he's got a changeup he can mix in that's in the mid to high 80s. This just sounds like an elite pitcher if you didn't even know who he was and how good his numbers were. I mean, outside the conference, we're talking about a guy with a 2.98 ERA, a 1.1 whip, which is walks and hits per inning pitch. So generally, an elite pitcher is below a 1.2. You're starting to get into like incredible numbers when you get to 1.1 and below. This guy, like I said, 1.1 whip out of conference, 1.83 Sierra, which is I think the lowest we've seen besides the dude that had a negative and broke the stat, which wasn't a good thing, by the way. Yeah. He walks hitters only 5.8% of the time, strikes them out 35% of the time. When we talk about elite pitchers and the guys I love to ramble on about, we're talking about a strikeout percentage of 30%. Like that's so good. His strikeout percentage for starter, yes. His strikeout percentage minus his walks is 29.6. This guy is incredible. And he's a majority ground ball guy. 54% of the time he gets a ground ball. If we look at his conference numbers, this is the ACC we're talking about. This is one of the best conferences in college baseball. 3.32 ERA, 1.12 whip. I think his Sierra went down.
His
It
Sierra did. He went
did.
down by .1.
He struck out
Oh,
people more, walked them the same amount. He cracked 30% when we were talking about strikeouts minus walks. This guy is incredible. And if you look back at his stats, you can kind of see exactly what happened. He cut his walks more than in half from his freshman year to his sophomore year. He was already a good pitcher sophomore or his freshman year. He wasn't elite. He didn't pitch a ton, only 25 innings. But like 3.63 Sierra, the number was there. He just needs to cut down on walks. It's like when you cut that, you're talking about 12% walks, you definitely need to cut down. You don't also expect his strikeouts to jump up 10%.
oh,
It's
it's silly.
incredible.
It's absolutely silly.
And then we talk a lot about batted ball profile. And one of the biggest numbers we look at for pitchers, beyond, compared to ground balls and fly balls, how many, what are you doing there? I mean, only 30% of the time he gives up a fly ball. 10% of the time it's a homer. His freshman year, it was 19%. So he cut that almost in half. Like, everything about this guy is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have a tendency for hyperbole. Like, I have a tendency to exaggerate how good some of these guys can be, talking about like, oh yeah, come pitch for the Braves now. Whoever the fuck I said that about. But this guy, I mean, besides Bremner, this is the best pitcher we've talked about that isn't already drafted somewhere. Like,
Oh, for sure.
this guy is absolutely incredible. My only complaint, and this is me being as old school as a 23-year-old can be, he only pitched about 5 2/3 innings per start. I would like to see a little more, but when we're talking about a bullpen like Florida State's, which I'll get into in a minute, that's like 5 2/3 isn't bad because you have guys that can pick up those last 3 innings of games, those last like 9 or 10 outs, and just shut teams down. So you have the ball going from this one of the best starting pitchers in college baseball. I'm really the only guys that you could talk about being better than him are Bremner and Prager from Texas A&M, who I'll talk about probably last because they're number one. He's also a lefty. Like,
Oh, he's a lefty. I
he's a
did not realize he
lefty.
was a lefty.
This dude is absolutely incredible. Like, I could go on and on and on about him all day. I'm gonna stop myself to talk about a couple other guys on that team, but this guy, man, that is not just the key to Florida State's success. That could be the reason that they win a ton of games is just him, because he could keep you in a 1-run game for 6 innings, and they have the offense to make up for that.
Oh, for sure. He's one of those guys that it's not a lock for a Friday, but man, do you like to think
Oh
that
my
you have
goodness.
a great feeling about any Friday game.
Yeah.
I think that if you got this guy on the bump, the Friday game, you have a fantastic feeling about. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, he is the stats. He's the accolades to go along with it. I guess
Yep.
the acclaim, I guess, is maybe a better word to go for it. But
Yeah.
I mean, for everything I've seen, it looks like he's got everything to back it up. This guy's gonna have a big year.
Yeah.
100%.
And
if
I
he can
mean,
stay healthy, which
oh my
I have
goodness,
no
yeah.
indication as to why he wouldn't. I mean, that's the only thing I can think that could slow this guy down is if all of a sudden he just doesn't play.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, just his counting stats are incredible. I don't know if you saw it, but 159 strikeouts in 105 2/3 innings. That's like, again, reliever levels of strikeout rate in a starting pitcher going out and pitching over 100 innings.
Oh yeah.
This dude is incredible. And going back to those player rankings, like we've talked about other guys on this list. Bremner's number 2. Aiden Knack from Clemson is number 4. Gabe Gackle from Arkansas. I think I'm going to talk about him eventually. He's up there. Grayson Grinsell from Oregon is up there. J.D. Thompson from Vandy. Mason McConaughey from Nebraska. Like, there's a ton of names on here that I just scroll through and go like, oh yeah, we talked about him. We talked about him. We talked about him. Like, and Jamie Arnold, I mean, my one gripe with Bremner was that he didn't pitch a ton of, like, compared to some of these other guys. Only 9 starts, 88 and 2/3 innings. He still gunned people down at 104 strikeouts in those innings.
Oh yeah.
We're talking about Arnold, who pitched 17 more innings than Bremner, only walked 5 more people, and struck out 55 more. This dude's absolutely insane.
It's insane. Yeah,
This dude's insane.
That's why I think in my analysis, what I had for Brimner is they said that he could be the first right-handed pitcher off the board if he goes to the MLB draft. This is the reason why Brimner was not like in conversation to be the first pitcher to come off the board. You know,
Yes.
like
This dude is.
I think there was an important reason that was a distinction was made that the first right-handed pitcher.
Yeah,
you know?
This dude is incredible. And I mean, the fact that there's another lefty up there in Ryan Prager that we're talking about, that I'll be talking about soon, or not soon, next episode, that's even like in the conversation to be as good as this guy is crazy. But I'm going to move on and stop talking about Jamie Arnold. And talk about center fielder Max Williams. He transferred him from Bama last year. Gosh, anything like usually I try to format these so that I talk about guys and like, hey, I'll talk about like a bit of the less exciting guys first, or, you know, save the most exciting guy. I was too excited to talk about Jamie Arnold. I knew I wanted as much time as possible to talk about him, so I brought him up first. So
there you go.
Center fielder Max Williams. Everything I read about him, I feel like I've said that about a ton of guys when I talk about defense. You can't find defensive stats, but what I read, this dude's a very, very good defender. At Bama, he didn't play much, only 31 plate appearances in all of his freshman year, not just conference play. His strikeout to walk ratio is not good. He strikes out. Oh wait, I'm sorry, Jamie Arnold. His strikeout ratio in conference play 6.56. Just another Jamie Arnold stat. 2 innings of strikeouts before he walks a guy. But yeah, Max Williams strikes out nearly 3 times more often than he walks, and he hit 14 homers, so he's got some pop there to back up how much he strikes out, or to offset, sorry, how much he strikes out. In all play, he had a WRC plus of 125. Doesn't hit a ton of fly balls, only 36%, but hits 22% of them for homers. So he's efficient with his fly balls. We then look at conference play. His stats drop a good bit. He's much closer to an average hitter in conference play, WRC plus of only 103. But when we're talking about, this is another thing we talked about, you know, you want your obviously your first baseman to be able to hit big. Corner outfielders, corner infielders, you want to be able to hit big. Third base, obviously you still want defense from all those positions. When we're talking about it, positions that can give up a little more offense and be very good on defense and contribute at a high level. Center field and shortstop are the two to think of. And he's a very good defensive center fielder. So the fact he gives up a little on offense isn't the worst thing in the world. But if he can bring those conference numbers up, I mean, this was really his first full year of conference ball. First year of college ball. First full year, really, of playing every day. I mean, this guy could be a very, very important piece. A bit lower in the lineup, but very important piece. One thing I would expect to see a little more is his speed in the outfield translate to the base paths. Only 5 stolen bases all year. This could be a guy, if he can get the stolen bases, get the on base up a little bit, he could be a leadoff guy for them that we're talking about. I don't think he's the Vandy center fielder from years past. Yeah. I don't think he's that kind of speed, but speed on the base paths, speed in the outfield, good arm. And, I mean, still an above-average bat against a very tough conference. The biggest problem for him is strikeouts. They jumped up another 4% in conference play. Home runs dropped about 5%. You know, if he can put it together in conference play, this dude could be very, very important for this team. He will be very, very important for this team. He could just help this team get even further than they did last year, potentially.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I think, especially within his first full year of play, because at Bama he had 31 plate appearances the entire
Yeah.
year. Just like I said, this is his first real like year of true college ball, and I mean he's
Mhm.
like you said, the conference numbers kind of grew a little bit, but overall definitely showed some solid flashes for somebody who's essentially his first year of college ball.
Yeah. Especially with a position like center field, you want to start with defense and work to the offense. If the defense is there, we can build on that. If I'm Coach Link Jarrett, I'm saying, hey, man, I love what you got for me. Just give me a little more on offense, and we'll be golden. We'll
Mm-hmm.
look amazing. And, I mean, obviously, last year, and I will say, one of my notes on this team, um, last year they had 4 guys account for 81 homers as a group. James Tibbs III, Jaime Ferrer, Cam Smith, and Marco Dingus. I'm There's about a 95% chance I'm pronouncing that wrong. They made those 4 guys hit 81 homers combined of the 131 for the team. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a similar to NC State thing of they lost an absolute ton of production from some very very good players, but we'll see how that all pans out. Getting into a couple of freshmen that are projected into the starting lineup, Miles Bailey and Hunter Carnes. These guys are, you talk about talent. Oh my. I'm going to start with Miles Bailey. According to Perfect Game, he's a corner infielder or just anywhere in the outfield. He's probably going to be playing first for this Florida State team. Obviously, Cal Fisher got a lot of experience, or not a lot of experience last year, but got experience last year. They're going to want him to stay at third. Bailey's going to slot into that first base position. He might slide across at some point. This dude was the number 1 first baseman in the nation, according to Perfect
Oh
Game.
wow, okay, this is a big pick. This isn't just your average Joe freshman.
This man is incredible.
Okay.
6'4", 235 at 19 years old. Yeah, he was drafted in the 20th round to the White Sox. Decided to come to Florida State. I mentioned before Perfect Game prospect grades. Obviously, he's a 10, which, to get into that a little more, potential very high draft pick and or elite level college prospect. Yeah, this dude is an elite talent. Back in 2023, they have some recorded stats for him. In the outfield, he was throwing 89 miles an hour. On the infield, throwing 84. Had a 97 mile an hour max exit velo. And this was a full year ago. This was
I agree. So he
July
was
of
17,
23. This dude was 17 years
17,
old.
18 right there.
Probably has put on a good bit of muscle and a decent bit of height since then. He's a big dude. And he
He
looks...
reminds me a lot of myself at that age.
I wish you would look that good at that age, because you would have been playing ball for us and probably would have won a few more games. But
That would have been ideal. The bonus,
looking
I still have
into
4 years
his
of eligibility.
true, looking into his stats from high school that are listed on Florida State's page, he was MVP of his school twice, Perfect Game All-American, Baseball Factory All-American, hit 329 with 7 homers, 31 walks, 683 slug. Like, this dude was elite in high school. And I think he was playing in some very big high school competition.
Where'd you say he was from?
Tallahassee.
Oh yeah, so he's
Yeah.
There,
There's
you
some
probably
good
ran into a
there's some
few
good baseball
guys
down there.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Here's the fun thing about this Florida State team. He's not the best freshman prospect. Hunter Carnes,
Okay.
drafted in
I
the
see,
20th round to the Diamondbacks. Perfect grade of 10. Number 1 catcher in the nation, number 12 prospect overall.
Oh my goodness.
Bailey was number 37. Hunter Carnes is number 12. This dude
Jeez.
projects to DH for them because they have Jackson West, who's a solid catcher. This dude, man, like, we're talking 6 foot and 195. Not quite the incredible physical specimen that Bailey is. Still, 6 foot 195 at 19 years old. I mean, behind the plate, same thing as Bailey. So July 23, He was throwing 92 miles out of the 92 miles an hour out of the outfield and 78 from behind the plate. Pop time of 1.89. We're talking elite
Ooh,
pop times get down to like the 1.5s, but or not actually.
yeah.
Like I think if I'm remembering right, but 1.89 as a 17-year-old is very good. 91 mile an hour max exit velo. Like,
Did you want to maybe explain pop time?
oh, probably should. So pop time is, I would say what it sounds like, but it doesn't sound like really anything. It is the time from the ball hitting the catcher's glove from the pitch to them getting the ball out of the glove, throwing it, and it hitting the catcher, the second baseman or shortstop's glove at second base to stop a runner, to catch a runner stealing. So 1.89 seconds is hits the glove, transfer, get up, go, and it travels that entire distance, hits the second baseman's glove. This dude, like, I'm watching a little bit of his perfect game, like highlight stuff, from out in Arizona. That's Chasefield, Arizona. But this dude, like when we're talking about Miles Bailey, it's like, wow, he's a really good prospect, just a freshman. Like, wow, he's not even the highest graded freshman on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's incredible.
I think one of the things is for this, when you see a lot of these freshmen who are asked to take these roles on early, is how well they'll adjust to conference play.
Yes.
Because I immediately go back to think of like Hunter Hines, for instance, one of the big hitters for Mississippi State. He did exceptional out of conference, and then all of a sudden his freshman year, whenever he went in conference, he didn't obviously do as well. And not saying that these guys will do bad by any stretch of the imagination. They're obviously extraordinarily talented players like we just went through. I just know that some freshmen really take well to the conference play, other freshmen don't take as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if these guys can really get it going, and then also keep that momentum going to conference play. Those would be two huge pickups for this team. But like Duncan said, I mean, these guys are going to be the next cornerstones for this program.
Oh yeah, it's just incredible talent to bring in 1 year. I mean, I'm sure there's other freshmen that I'm not even bringing up that I maybe should be about this team, but those two guys projected into the starting lineup as freshmen for a top 10 team. This is very, very impressive. Next thing I'm going to move on to is a couple of JUCO transfers. Chase Williams and Bladen Plain. I'm going to start with Chase Williams. As a freshman, going to go back to his perfect game stuff from 2023. He was drafted in the 19th round to the Dodgers. Decided to go to, which JUCO did he go to? Northwest Florida State College. Don't have his perfect game grade, but he was the number 500 prospect overall, 283rd at shortstop, number 40 prospect in the state of Alabama. He's a switch hitter, not a big guy, not the like imposing physical guy that the other twos are. Only 5'8", 150. That was at 17 years old. I'm assuming they haven't really updated his size, and actually they might have, but not a super big guy. But at I believe, is this a JUCO or community college? I think it's a JUCO. Yeah, JUCO. Yeah. In 55 games played, /379, 473, 460, stole 29 bags. This is just a leadoff guy. This is just a leadoff guy. Speed, on base, good glove. This is a fun guy to have on a team. And this is going to be a theme for Florida State. Like I said, they lost a ton of home runs. They lost 81 of their 131. They're going to need to produce runs. This is a guy that can produce runs. He can get on base. He can steal a ton of bags. He's a good arm in the feet. He's a good glove. That's another thing about this team. They're very good defensively, and they're pretty dang fast. Like,
and just looking at kind of the makeup of this team as of right now, based solely off of previous year stats, it's interesting to see almost the anticipation of a philosophical change from this, because a team that is so heavily reliant on a home run last year, or not heavily reliant, but we're seeing that put up such significant home run numbers. I mean, to only have one guy who's returning and he's hitting 14 home runs, and that's going to be the top. I think it might go into maybe a little bit of a directional change. Maybe they're not going to put up the same home run numbers this year, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be as effective or have the potential to be as effective. And so it's just interesting to see how much of a sudden switch. I mean, because 130 something homers that's nothing to sneeze at. That is a pretty significant amount of home runs to hit in the season, and so for them to only be returning a guy with the highest level of returning that they're going to have is going to be 14 home runs. It's an interesting shift for sure.
Yeah, it seems to be a shift in a lot of the top ACC teams. I mean, NC State lost a ton of homers. Duke lost a ton of homers. Florida State has lost a ton of homers. So these teams may be better suited for postseason play in that they're not as reliant on the homer ball, similar to Florida. Maybe not going to strike out as much. Maybe not going to be as reliant on the homer, able to produce runs more effectively. I think Chase Williams could be a really big part of that for them. Because like I said, 29 stolen bases is a ton. He got caught 7 times. I think he was being pretty aggressive on the base paths, but tone that aggression down just a little, be a little more picky, and steal 20 bags and only get caught once. That'd be really nice to have. I'm not saying that's going to be done. That's tough to do, but this dude could be a big part of that. And the next JUCO guy I want to talk about is Bladen Plain. This guy graduated in 2022, decided to go to Pensacola State. He was a perfect game, grade 10 prospect out of high school, number 260 in the nation, the number 6 first baseman, lefty bat, another big physical guy, 6'5", 215.
God.
Yeah, big dude. Was throwing 90 miles an hour out of the outfield, hitting 97 off the bat in 2020. So I'm assuming he's got a bit bigger and stronger since then, probably refined his game even more. So there's a reason he projects into the outfield, even though he was a first baseman as a prospect. In 23-24, he hit 370, 491, 642. And those stats were actually down from his previous year. Yeah, he was pretty dang good. If we look at X-rays hits here, he hit only 9 homers. But if we go back to his freshman year there, hit 17 homers. This guy is quite good. He's just another big athlete that they can plug into this lineup. And he stole 14 bases last year. At
6'5", 215.
At 6'5", 215.
Jeez.
Like, this
so,
is...
yeah, mate, I think that really does signify what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it's a philosophical change for this team to just lean into, hey, we're just going to manufacture runs. Like, forget the long ball. We'll still hit some. We're going to lean in to getting on base, getting to second off a stolen base, probably a good bit, and just making it happen. That's a fun team to watch. Now, that is helped a ton by having a guy like Jamie Arnold to go out there and shut down a team on a Friday. Limit them to just a couple runs, probably less. The problem becomes when you get into the other guys that are going to potentially be starting. They're projected starters for this team. So I'm going to start with Joey Vellini. He had Tommy John in 23, had a very solid 22 for the University of South Florida, the Bulls. In 24, started 3 games, only pitched 28 and 2/3 in 14 appearances. Walked guys at about 10% of the time, struck out guys about 20% of the time. 4.29 Sierra, not super impressive numbers. I'm going to kind of skim through these guys just because, I've already talked about Florida State a good bit. We've been talking for a while now about them. But he projects to be their Saturday guy. Another lefty, actually all 3 of their projected starters for the weekend, according to D1 Baseball, are lefties. From what I read and from the baseball knowledge I have, generally your second year coming off Tommy John is when you really start to get things back, because your first year you still don't want to push it too hard. Even though you're a year out, you don't want to go too crazy and have to have it again. But coming into his second year at post-surgery, he could be looking to push it harder, tick back up to his max velocity. And I feel like I'm talking so much about Jamie Arnold because I am. You come into a pitching staff, and as a lefty, you may not have the stuff that he has, but I feel like having that kind of guy around, having that kind of culture of
Mm-hmm.
that good of a player on your team. I'm curious who Florida State's pitching coach is. I should have looked this up, but if he can produce a guy like Jamie Arnold and groom that kind of talent, whatever Arnold did to fix his walks and just jump his strikeouts up to get rid of homers, not every guy's going to be able to do that. But if you can take a little bit of a jump, Vellini could be a very important piece for them. Wes Mendez, projected to be their Sunday guy, sophomore from Ole Miss in his freshman year. Only appeared in 17 games, 2 starts, had a save, 31 and 2/3 innings. Overall, 3.45 Sierra, which generally, when like we've talked about this with relievers, it's tougher to look at their ERA because they just don't pitch as much. When you look at their Sierra, if it looks good, that's a very good sign. Because if his ERA was bad, which it was, 6.82, his Sierra was still good. This bodes well for this Florida State team that he has stuff, he has good stuff, he has potential to get better. If we look at Mendez's conference stats against the SEC, he was not great. 7.71 ERA, 4.29 Sierra, which jumps up from like a 3.5, I believe. I think he actually walks guys less or strikes them out more, one of the two. His ratio of strikeouts to walks gets better, but his whip gets worse. He was getting hit hard against the SEC, and he was a freshman, so we'll see how it turns out for him. He didn't pitch a ton. Could be tough to slide him into that Sunday role, but could be interesting. Peyton Prescott, we were talking about the preseason player rankings, the relievers. If we go up here, Peyton Prescott, according to D1 Baseball, is the 41st best reliever. So made the list, not super high on it, but could be very interesting for them. Projects as their closer. As a freshman last year for Jacksonville, nothing crazy. 6 starts, 52 and 2/3, so his stuff stretches out over a little longer, but not terribly impressive numbers. But they think he could have a jump. Something shows there. A guy I actually missed that I wanted to bring up. We talked about Cole Triba from UC Santa Barbara really early on. He's number 2 on this list. Derek Smith from NC State, who I brought up, number 7. NC State actually has another guy that's not their projected closer that is, according to D1 Baseball, the number 1 reliever in the country, and that's Jacob Duden. His numbers last year aren't crazy, but another guy that they think could have a step forward, apparently a pretty big one, to be the number 1 reliever in the nation. Drew Titsworth, another guy I talked about there from Clemson. Just wanted to say that name again because it's fun. But he's number 12.
It's obligatory.
It's obligatory. I have to talk about Titsworth, but he looks really good. Gabe Davis from Oklahoma State, Miller Green from Vandy. Bunch of guys on this list that we talked about. Prescott projects at 41, according to D1 Baseball. But the very last thing I want to say about Florida State in general is their bullpen projects to be really good. I mean, they have 3 guys on the top 100 relievers list: Prescott, Connor Holtz, and John Abraham. They have another guy that I have lost his stats and forgotten his first name, and I want to get it right. Joe Charles, another good reliever for them. Bullpen could be a really big strength for them. Could make up for some of their deficiencies when we're talking about, or projected to my mind, deficiencies when we talk about their other 2 starters. And we're talking about tournament play. If we're going to have Arnold out there every 3rd game, he's going to be handing it to that bullpen. It's going to look real good.
All right. Well, that's all you got to say about that one. I'll go ahead and move on up to Georgia, which is the number 8 team in the country. And just a little bit about the Georgia Bulldogs. Had an outstanding year last year.
Yes.
So last year they had a record of 43 and 17, 17 and 13 in conference play. So overall, very good record. Their coach is Wes Johnson, and I don't think he's been there for too terribly long, but he seems to have the program going in quite the right direction.
Last year was his first season.
Yeah, that's what it says here, and I was looking at. So I'm He hasn't been there terribly long, but he's made his impact felt. Duncan, would you like to guess what year Georgia won the national championship in baseball?
I literally just saw it and I already forgot. 90? Was it 90? And I'm remembering
Yeah, it
that?
was
Okay.
1990.
I just
So
pulled
we were
it
talking
up.
about a team program that has. I think that past few years have not treated them nearly as kind, though.
No.
And to end their season last year, Duncan, would you also like to guess who they lost to in the Athens Super Regional?
Oh, NC State.
Oh, Duncan.
My
NC State
least
hater
favorite
Duncan.
team, if you ask the
He is
comments.
seething. He's balding. He's crying. He's throwing up. He's everything. Um.
I
So
don't actually know if my mic or like Discord like records me laughing because I swear
mm,
to God, every time I laugh, the little green circle's not around my thing. But I am laughing
yeah,
a lot at that.
the NC State hater.
Dude, that is so funny. Like
The
that was
evidence
the
is there.
funniest thing.
I mean, I don't know.
The
So,
evidence
anyways,
is there.
the evidence is there. Let
Sorry,
them
I'll
know.
stop interrupting.
So what happens is that one of the big questions for this team: how do you replace a guy like Charlie Condon?
Oh
Uh,
my God.
you don't just you don't just wake up every morning, walk down the street, and walk past a college baseball stadium and say, "Oh, there's four Charlie Condons there." It's like, no, that's not quite how it works. And it's interesting that I actually got to do Florida here because it's almost a similar situation of how do you replace Jack? Well, how do you replace Charlie?
Yeah.
Um, and I think another guy that really kind of got lost in how great of a season that Charlie Condon had, Corey Collins. He was kind of the Batman and Robin kind of thing. And just one little quick stat about him. I don't want to harp on him for too long, but I mean, his on base percentage was 574.
Whew.
So, I
Wow.
mean, he is greater than a coin flip. He actually had a higher on base than Charlie Condon. Obviously, he
That's
didn't have the rest of the
incredible.
numbers, but I mean, just to know that you had those two guys, and so what you kind of got, I guess, swept under how just good Condon was. I mean, that's two huge holes to make up for. I think this team has done a very good job of filling in. I've been very impressed with it thus far. So, but I'll keep going around. So this team has some arms. They have a pretty impressive rotation and a pretty doggone good bullpen.
Mm,
I know they have multiple guys who are going to be in the top 100 relievers for pitchers,
I did see
and
one
they
of them.
have a 1-2 punch that I'm really excited to get on into. They don't necessarily have numbers that are going to pop off the screen right off rip, but I think once you dive into it a little bit more, we'll touch base on it. One thing that I really want to harp on here is that Georgia got a huge ballpark renovation over this past summer.
Yeah, they
I
did.
read I read a lot about it. They got a renovation and such. They got a pitching lab. That was one of the big things that apparently was quite impressive because multiple MLB teams even came out to check out this pitching lab. And they've said it's done a tremendous amount of work, even though that the construction cut into a little bit of how their offseason training and such was going. That once that they have all the facilities open and such, that it's been a big hit. And Colton Smith, their Friday guy, and obviously you may want to take this with a grain of salt, but he says that they have about 18 to 20 different guys who can touch 95. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
obviously, I don't anticipate them to roll out 18 to 20 guys who are just going to be throwing 95 miles an hour every week. It's one thing to throw 95 in a lab, it's another to throw 95 accurately on the bump while you're in the middle of, I guess, a deep conference game. So I wouldn't take that, but I'm just saying that these guys, there's some serious depth in this pitching. Still pretty remarkable. And I think that's one thing, too, is that this team was ranked 10th in the SEC in ERA, 5.71. So it wasn't necessarily like a tremendous strength for them. They didn't have like an amazing ERA. So they really, I feel like they went and got some guys who can provide that level of pitching. And would you also like to take a guess of how many transfers they brought in?
Oh, I've been looking at their team. I think it was like 4 or 5 in the lineup, and then I know there was at least one in the starting rotation. So like 6.
16. You were close.
So 6 in starting positions, but
Yeah.
16 overall. Okay, actually not
This
even
is this
6,
is
7. I was wrong.
this is a reloading year. This is
Yes.
not a rebuild. This is a reload. At least in the eyes of Georgia, in the eyes of Wes Johnson, this is a reloading year, 100%. So I'm very excited about this team. This is one of the teams that's really got me just very excited because not only the fact that they just bring in a lot of these pitching, not only the fact that they're renovating their ballpark, really investing in their program. I absolutely love to see colleges investing into their college baseball programs. All that to say, still, these guys got juice in their bats. They're returning guys, multiple guys you hit into the teens for home runs, double digits for home runs. I mean,
Oh
oh, Duncan, I know exactly whose name you just read across, and I'll
no, I
touch on him in a
forgot about
second.
that.
I'll touch on him in a second. Um, so, one of the key contributors I really want to talk about here, the first guy I want to talk about here, Trey Phelps. My apologies, Trey Phelps. He's a preseason All-American. This guy, absolute stud. Slash line last year of 353 batting average, 441 on base percentage, 699 slugging for a 1100 OPS. I know what you're sitting there thinking. Surely this freshman could not replicate that in conference play. I would implore you to switch over to his conference play tab, and it's almost identical numbers.
Jeez.
So it's not like this guy right here was just bullying a bunch of just random teams, whatever. No, he was bullying everybody he played against. Just for a reference, he had a 158 WRC plus for the overall for the season. He had a 147 WRC plus in conference. So at his worst in conference, he's 47% better than the average bat as
That's
a freshman.
incredible, dude.
No, it's insane. It's absolutely insane to see this kind of I guess maturity at the plate for such a young guy. He doesn't strike out a ton, but he also doesn't walk a ton. So I don't want to say net neutral because you always want to draw walks, but obviously you also don't want to strike out a ton. So he's pretty much putting the ball in play whenever he heads up there. He hits a ton of fly balls. For instance, just in conference play, 52% of his batted ball profile resulted in a fly ball. So he's putting the ball up in the air quite a bit. I think one of the only knocks on this guy is that his defense is a little questionable, which it's okay as long as he's played the DH role last year. So it's not like defense is terribly important to a DH. So if he can maintain that role from there.
Yeah, I mean, in this new era of baseball where you have that DH spot that you can kind of just throw a guy in, you've got that good of a bat. I mean, obviously there's not a ton of room for that on the team. You can't have 5-6 guys that are all incredible bats but can't play defense. But you have a guy like that, slot him in DH, let it eat.
No, for sure. And one thing is too, it's not like he had the most plate appearances in the world last year. He only had about 161 total, but half of those came in conference play. So it's not like he only played a little bit in conference play and he boosted up those numbers. No, like half of his plate appearances came from conference play. So seriously, he's an impressive guy. I am very hyped to see him. I'm very excited to see what he can do, especially the sophomore year, especially with apparently these significant renovations. Maybe he's going to get out there. Maybe he's been in the lab too, just perfecting that swing, doing whatever he needs to do to get it going.
Yeah, hey, if they've got 18, 20 guys that can touch 95, their bat shouldn't have any problem with velocity. They should have been seeing it all off season.
They don't. I heard they actually scrapped all their pitching machines. They just let their guys go out there and just do whatever they want.
Just let them
throw. Okay, so speaking of some pitchers and such, I want to touch base a little bit on Brian Curley. Brian Curley, he transferred in from VCU, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check his ranking.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, he's number 4th.
Yeah,
in the top 100 relievers according to D1 Baseball. Mm-hmm. So last year he put up a 2.87 ERA and 78 innings pitched. So I mean he had 19 appearances. So he was a stopper. He was a stopper for sure. Sierra isn't as great as his ERA. His ERA is a 3.82. So still pretty solid. Still very good, especially given the context of everything. So
yeah, for sure.
Pretty impressed on that. And let me see what other notes I got on him. I noticed that he's 78 innings for a relief guy. That's
a ton.
Yeah, he's got some stamina in him for sure. That'll be a huge thing. They actually have him projected to be the closer for Georgia. And I'm not saying he can't do that role or he won't do that role. I'm just saying that, man, 78 innings pitched out of the bullpen. That's
their most innings pitched from a pitcher last year, at least in those 5 guys that are projected. I mean,
the 5 guys are projected.
I mean, that's really nice. That's a really big luxury to have a guy that can go out and get you that much length as a back end reliever. That's very impressive.
And one thing is that his batted ball profile, he generates a ton of ground balls. So about 51.4% of his batted balls last year went for ground balls. So And I think that really kind of translates too, because if you look at his K percentage, he doesn't have an overwhelming amount of strikes. He only had about 22.7% uh, K percentage last year. So
Mhm.
it's not that 30% that you're usually used to seeing in the closer role, or some high level of strikeout X, Y, and Z. So
Especially for a guy who projects to be the fourth best reliever in the nation. That's just not the profile that I'd expect from him.
yeah, and that's one of the things that makes me believe that maybe he won't necessarily be their closer. Not like I said, he may just come in during the seventh and they say, "Hey, you take the rest of this game."
Yeah.
Like
Three inning
and
save.
maybe that's the de facto closer role. But
Hmm.
man, I just hate to see a guy with this much stamina and this much talent and ability to produce ground balls and such only come out and pitch 1 inning. I don't know.
Yeah, and I
So
mean to go back to the point we've made probably 10 times, could this be a Tigers thing where they have him come out and pitch a 3 inning start, lock somebody down for 3 innings, bullpen? Like that could be a thing. That you have a guy like that, it just opens up options if you're Georgia.
oh, for sure, 100%. Um, yeah, I'm very impressed. I'm intrigued to see how they're going to use him, to say the least. Now, the next guy I want to talk about, he's also a pitcher. We're going to keep in the pitching department. Is Colton Smith. Now, last year, or I guess let me start. He's projected to be their Friday guy this year, and just some of his basic stats right off the rip are 5.56 ERA across 69 innings. He had 20 appearances, only 4 games started last year, so I know that those aren't the most impressive numbers in the world. And
I see what is
I,
impressive though.
yes, yeah, and I think that's exactly what I'm leading into. With that being said, the Georgia faithful are very excited about this guy. From everything I've read, these guys they're very pumped, very excited, and I think one thing that really shows you how indicative of how good this guy can be. He had a 1.95 Sierra overall last year. So going back to what
Oh
Duncan
yeah.
said, you read Sierra like an ERA because all Sierra is it's called skill interactive ERA or earned run average. So it just takes into account like how many ground balls you hit, how many fly balls you generated. So not necessarily just based solely off of runs, but what level of contact you're producing, and it goes into the Sierra rating, right?
Hmm.
So to have a 1.95 Sierra is that's very elite numbers, and to me that really shows that this guy has tremendous potential.
Yes.
Uh, I would love to say that it's a secret I stumbled upon, except every single article I came across was talking about how good this guy is. So,
Yeah.
n-
And I mean,
not exactly that.
when we're talking about a guy that struck out 105 hitters in 69 and 2/3 and only walked 20, like a 5 strikeout to walk ratio, that's very very good. It's very very
Yeah.
good.
And I think too, one of the things that really got the Georgia fans really excited last year, if you head over to his conference play, 1.24 Sierra. So he lowers his Sierra, right? And if you look at
Ooh.
his K percentage to walk percentage, K minus walk percentage from
Mm-hmm.
his freshman year is a negative 2.7%. So he actually
Yeesh.
walked when he struck out across 45 innings of. Oh, I bumped my mic.
Okay.
Across 45 innings of work last year in conference play, he walked 4.7% of batters and struck out 37.8%
Hold
for a
up.
K minus walk percentage of 33%. Just silly
So
numbers.
so I was harping on and on and on about Jamie Arnold. His conference numbers were stupid. 36% strikeouts, 5.5% walks. You said that Colton Smith had a 4% walks?
Oh yeah.
And how many strikeouts?
So 37.8.
So more. More strikeouts and less walks than a guy I was just talking about for like 15 minutes as one of the best pitchers in baseball. Or college baseball,
Yeah.
sorry.
So he has a K to walk ratio of 8. So um
Wow.
yeah, and now let's pump the brakes a little bit. We're not saying this guy's better than Jamie Arnold, right?
No, that's still
Of
just
course, of
incredible.
course
That's
not.
like the
Of course not.
category.
However, if you understand how to read these numbers and you understand what we're talking about, you would understand why everyone is very excited to see this guy.
Yeah.
The 5.56 ERA does not do this guy justice whatsoever. I'm tremendously excited to see him.
What was his ERA in conference play?
4.8.
Okay,
But
so
like I said,
he
he
dropped
only
it
started two
already.
games then.
Yeah, so he got won the reliever effect for having an inflated ERA and not
Hmm.
from not pitching too much, and Two, he got better against better competition. Like, this is going to be one of my points all year. If the SEC isn't the best conference in baseball, I'd be surprised. Like,
it's going to be either SEC or ACC, one of the two. I mean,
one
those
of
two
the
are.
two.
Yeah, I mean, those two are tremendous conferences in baseball this year, and I don't know. I mean, I didn't even have all this written down. I literally had all I had for this guy was that he could be either one of the two guys. It could be a great Friday guy, be a great 1-2 pitch. I have his pitch arsenal right here.
Oh, please, yes.
Um, a fastball, a cutter, a sweeper, a curveball, and a changeup. So this guy has a bag.
That's fun. That's a
Yeah.
fun little bag.
That is a very fun, deep, especially for a college pitcher. That is a deep bag.
A guy going into his junior year.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a guy who's like, like redshirt senior, like I was talking about before with a couple of guys. Like, they've got a deep arsenal and they've been around for a minute. This guy is going into his junior year. Also, just one thing I noticed real quick before I forget it. Were you going to talk about Devin Obie at all?
No, by all means, chit chat about him.
So I mentioned him because when I was talking about Duke, he was their third best home run hitter last year against the ACC. This dude was a big loss for Duke. And he goes over to Athens. And, I mean, slashing 309, 399, 599 with 16 homers. This is a really big pickup for Georgia. Like, I'm very impressed by specifically him and Nolan McCarthy. I mean, you're talking about guys from tournament teams last year that they picked up. Guys that played a lot on tournament teams last year. Like you said, you don't just walk out on the street and find Charlie Compton, but you can moneyball your way into the parts of Charlie Compton. And that's a big pickup for Georgia.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And just to finish off Colton Smith a little bit, they said he got shut down last year because he was recovering from hernia surgery. So it looked like his season ended a little prematurely. So that would kind of make sense as to why the number of innings is a little bit low from there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, I talked enough about him. Let me talk about their Saturday guy, Leighton Finley. Now, this guy just right off rip, he has a 4.14 ERA across 76 innings pitched. He had 17 appearances and 16 starts, so he was much more of a consistent starter. Obviously, he's not necessarily has the numbers and such for Colton Smith, but by no means is this guy a bad Saturday guy. So, for instance, last year in conference play, he had a 4.68 ERA, so right in line with what he had normally from there. But he had a 3.47 Sierra. So again, this is another guy who Sierra really is quite liking a lot. They think that he's a lot better than his ERA is saying for sure.
Yeah, I mean that yet again projects well.
Oh, for sure. And actually, it's the funniest thing is that so D1 baseball absolutely loved Colton Smith. Mm-hmm. Well, Baseball America loved Leighton Finley. Leighton Finley, they talked about him for an entire paragraph, and they have him as the Friday guy. So it's yeah. So this is it's very interesting to see because they don't even mention Colton Smith in this Baseball America besides that, I'm pretty sure, and then vice versa in the D1 baseball. It's the weirdest thing. So
yeah,
obviously they have two major publications who believe in both of these guys pretty equally. Yeah. I mean he's pretty balanced batted ball profile. He's not a super fly ball pitcher, not super ground ball pitcher, nothing too crazy. He generates a good amount of pop-ups at 8.3%. He's just a great guy to have as a Saturday. I think that he's going to be steady enough. And I think between these two guys and the bats, I mean, I don't think the Sunday game might matter a whole lot for Georgia fans. I think most of them might stay home.
We're not necessarily talking about, a Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker 1-2 punch, but if you can have two guys that can go out there and give you quality starts Friday and Saturday, you're winning series all year. Not every team has that kind of 1-2 punch. I mean, even getting back into Florida State, as high up on the mountain as Jamie Arnold is, their Saturday starter isn't bad, but he's not up there. But when we're talking about two
Mhm.
guys that, like you said, according to D1 Baseball and Baseball America, are like interchangeable Friday Saturday guys, that's very impressive.
Oh, for sure. All right, and so I'm just gonna kind of hit on one or two different bats here. And of course, I got to talk about my guy Slade Alford. Slade Alford, the Mississippi State transfer. Um, Last year he had some pretty impressive numbers. So let me go ahead and touch base on him. He batted 300, an on base percentage of 370, and slugged 539 for 17 homers. And now, one thing is when you compare him at Mississippi State, he was a pretty below average bat, and so
Yeah.
to see him take this significant jump is quite good. And one thing I do want to say though is that those stats look really good. His overall WRC plus is a 113, but if you look at his conference numbers, I'm not saying they fall off a cliff, but they do take a dive.
His
So
WRC plus drops 20 points.
it drops 20 points. He's actually considered a below average bat in conference play as of last year. So he had a batting average in conference of 254, on base of 338, and slugged 476. And he hit 8 of his homers during conference play. So if Georgia wants to be right back where they were last year, competing for hosting a super regional, fighting back, Slade Alford has got to replicate the numbers he has overall into conference play, and I
Yes.
think a lot of Georgia fans they ended maybe with a little bit more of a very positive mindset because apparently Slade Alford had a tremendous showing at the super regionals. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but from every single time they mention them, they're like he had a tremendous showing there. But if they want to get back, he's going to have to put up consistent numbers. You can't have that level of drop off from an everyday
No.
starter. At least if you want to be a national championship contender, that's just you can't make that happen. At least in my opinion. I don't know if you disagree with that, but it's
No,
just hard.
I totally agree. I mean, if you want to have, I mean, you look at this guy in out of conference play as one of the best bats in your lineup, and you want him to like this is one of the cornerstones of your offense. You can't have that fall off. Like I said, not necessarily fall off a cliff, but drop considerably in conference play if you want him to really show up. I mean, I just pulled up his conference numbers or his game numbers. Um, I'm not terribly impressed by what he did in the Super
Oh,
Regional.
really? Okay, so maybe it was.
In 3 games, he went 2 for 12. With the 2 hits coming in the same game. I believe he hit a homer in that game. He struck out twice in those 12 at bats. Um,
Oh, perhaps I've been led astray.
it looks like in postseason play in general, it looks like he was pretty good. In the
Ah, so
regional,
maybe that's what it means.
it looks like he played a little better. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, I think in the oh sorry, 3 for 12 in the gosh, why do they have runs first and not hits? But 3 for 12 in the super, but then 3 for 5 against Army, 3 for 5 against UNCW. Do you know UNCW? Off the top of your head, do you know what that acronym is?
Probably University of North Carolina, Wilmington.
There you go. And then against Georgia Tech, he went 0 for 4. But he showed up a
So
lot more
it's
in the regional than he did in the
that's
super
probably what it
against
was
NC
then.
State.
I see. Against your beloved NC State.
Which apparently
So
I was very wrong about NC State's pitching stuff, so maybe that's not that bad.
no. And we don't see a similar as much of a case for Colby Branch, their shortstop, but there is a slight dip in production from him. So I think between overall and I guess conference play, I think if this team wants to get back to where they were, help replace the Corey Collins and the Charlie Condons, those two guys have to step up for
Yeah.
sure. Uh, this team is full of transfers. I know throughout the series this may seem a little inconsistent, just given the fact that a lot of teams that have a lot of transfers, at least I personally have maybe not viewed as ranked as highly from there. But I think that this team really went out and they just got the right guys in the transfer portal. I think that they got a super talented guys, also returning a bunch.
Yeah.
I think that the starting rotation helps them a ton. Having
Yeah.
some guys in the bullpen. I'm very excited for Georgia. They were one of the teams that I was looking at when I was doing the breakdown that I'm just like beyond pumped to. And I don't know why. If I had to make a list of teams I'm most excited about, I've yet to talk about one of them. It would be probably the team I've yet to talk about, Georgia, and then Santa Barbara. I don't know why. I'm pumped about Santa
UCSB was like
Barbara.
the first I think the first team you talked
Yeah,
about, and it was like this
yeah,
is just a fun team.
dude. No, I want to see. I will dedicate some time, especially since
Oh heck yeah!
Mississippi State's their game got rain delayed for a Saturday. I
Oh,
will be catching the Saturday game for Santa Barbara for
who do they
sure.
play? Do you
So
know?
no, I don't know who they play off the rip, but I will be there no matter what.
You're gonna fly to Santa Barbara? I don't even know if they're playing in Santa Barbara. But,
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? So that's all I'll harp on Georgia. If
yeah,
you
I
want to go ahead and
mean,
get right on into the next one.
I mean, I just want to say one more thing about Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned about like it may seem we're a little inconsistent about like how we view transfers. How I personally view transfers, and from what I've seen from doing this podcast with you, Luke, I think we both view them very similarly. And to say, and that is to say, if you have a transfer with a bunch of experience, no matter where they played, experience matters.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to put like that Florida Atlantic transfer, Christian Adams, I'm going to look at that and go, he put up really good numbers at Florida Atlantic. Maybe you're going to see a tick down in the SEC, but he's a junior guy. He's played really well. Like we're talking about the guys, I believe it was who was it? It was Duke that had a couple guys that I was super impressed by, like the Georgetown and Harvard transfers that impressed
Yeah, yeah.
in fall ball. Like the Harvard guy or one of the Harvard guys because they had two. Ben Rounds had a 174 WRC plus. Like he was super impressive at Harvard. And I mean, Clemson was another team I talked about that had a ton of transfers. The transfers looked really good. NC State, on the other hand, their transfers
Oh
didn't.
no,
I know,
Duncan.
but
Duncan.
I'm giving the example of their transfers didn't necessarily have the level of experience and the level of production that some of these other guys had, so I'm less impressed. Now, that isn't to say that those guys won't go out there and just absolutely demolish. Like, we've seen, I've mentioned this before, we've looked at plenty of guys that one year they had a really bad down year, the next year they looked incredible. Now, we could be looking at those guys and saying, hey, this guy didn't have the best year last year. Maybe he was hurt. Like, I know two of the NC State transfers were hurt. So, going into next year, they're fully healthy. Maybe they really have big years. It's much harder to project a guy that didn't play. I can much easier look at a guy that did play and say, hey, I know what his numbers look like against this level of competition. I can project that way easier than a team or than a guy that didn't play. And like I know I went on for a while about FSU freshmen. They're super talented. We have no idea how they project. Like Luke said, maybe in conference play, similar to how Hunter Hines did, they just won't look as good.
For sure.
And that's my spiel on
No,
transfers.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't disagree with these other.
Yeah. Getting into our next team, number 7, Oregon State, the Beavs of Corvallis. Yet again, rip to the Pac-12. You talk about a team that has maybe dealt with adversity better than any other team. It's this one. This team lost their conference and still returned more talent than a lot of other teams around the nation. And picked up talent too. It's not like their guys were just like, oh, we're going to hang out. No, they picked up one guy that I'm going to talk about that, according to D1 Baseball, was, quote, the belle of the transfer ball.
Gee,
Right.
see, that's one thing too. Before you even get into this, Oregon State is a tremendous program.
Yes.
They
are
have
an
been they have a
incredible
great
program.
culture. Year in and year out, they just I don't know. They seem to just remain competitive. All I can say there, and granted, maybe I'm looking at through I guess rose-colored glasses just because that 2018 team was so special.
Oh, man.
But I mean, it's hard when I think of Oregon State. I immediately hark back to that 2018 squad, and so I don't know. This is a very good baseball school for sure. I'm honestly
Yeah,
shocked that their stadium is not bigger.
I know.
Um,
I was very
yeah,
surprised as well.
I'm gonna look that up and see if that's accurate because that almost just seems a little
It feels very
preposterous. Is the
low,
word I'm looking for.
but
But you go ahead and get into it. I'll check on it.
yeah,
Just
and
see
I
how
mean
accurate.
we're talking about the culture and the guys this team's produced. Two guys that immediately come to mind. Travis Bazana is one of the top prospects in college, in not college baseball, in the MLB. Um, Incredible. And then we can go talk about one of the best catchers in the MLB, Adley Rutschman. Um, that dude has light tower power from both sides of the plate. Those are the guys I think of when I think Oregon State, and it seems like they're keeping that momentum as best they can without the Pac-12. Um, Last year they were 45-16. Their coach Mitch Canham is 176-87 in 5 seasons. They've been to 23 regionals in their history, 7 in a row. Last year they made supers, and they lost to a very good Kentucky team in 2 games. Last time they went to Omaha was 2018. They won it all in 3 games against Arkansas. This is just a very good program. Very, very good program. Did you find what you were looking for?
Oh yeah, I mean it appears to be low record. Apparently, the record stadium attendance was last year versus Tulane with 4,200 people.
I don't know how big of a school they are in terms of population.
Hold up, let me see. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start talking about a couple guys here, unless you find that very quickly. But
Don't worry, I found it rather quick.
Go
Oh
ahead.
hell, that's the school size. 422 acres, Duncan, because that's what you're looking for.
That's
Um,
decent. I've also heard
33,000
Oregon
people.
State. How many
33,000.
states? What, like 40?
No, state's like 20, dude.
20?
25.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, they just pack everybody into the dude every week.
That's very true. The dude is literally every person on campus being there, and every person
Every
in
person
Starkville.
within the entire county.
Yeah, just every person in Occidental.
Oh wait, here we
Shows
go.
up to
Wait.
the team. Oh.
24,000 on the Corvallis campus. Okay, so 24,000 on their main campus. So it's right. It's the
Okay.
same size as state.
That's okay. And I will say, the dude is an outlier in terms of how big it is, how many people show up. And I mean, how big is LSU? And they're like our only competition for how many people show up. They're a massive, massive school. LSU.
Yeah.
Do you know how big is LSU? Am I tripping?
No, LSU is
Okay.
a large school, but I
They're
think
very
we're going down a rabbit hole.
We absolutely are. To get back a little more on track, my favorite thing to do is go down rabbit holes. But first guy I'm going to talk about for them, I'm going to talk about a couple pitchers to start: Nelson Keljo and Eric Segura. 2 seconds to reorganize myself. Nelson Keljo last year, 4.19 ERA in 3 starts, 43 innings, across 20 appearances. Strikes people out 31% of the time, only walks them 7%. That's what pops off the page for him. He's very high strikeout guy. 1.37 whip, Sierra of 2.42.
Man, that's
His
quite
ERA
impressive.
was 4.19. FIP, a stat which usually doesn't love people, even if Sierra does, 3.53. His xFIP was higher at 4.48, but we're talking about Sierra of 2.42. This is a reliever last year for the most part. He absolutely dominated the pen. Yeah, this guy's impressive. But it is another question of moving a reliever into a starting role. And it clearly is super common at the top level of college baseball. These guys are super talented. They can go do it. Now, 20 appearances, 43 innings, about 2 innings an appearance. He gave up 45 hits in 43 innings. I'll be interested to see how his stuff stretches over a little longer, given this is his 3rd year of college ball. We could see a big step up for him. There's another good lefty arm. We'll see if the strikeout stuff can transfer. Slash line was 259, 323, 385. What's interesting for him, actually, is when people put the ball in play against him, they hit very well. He has a 375 BABIP against, and part of that is 50% of the batted balls he gives up are fly balls. So he doesn't give up a ton of homers. Only 5% of those fly balls go for homers, which actually was a massive improvement on his freshman year and contributed a lot to his literally all of his stats dropping from an ERA, FIP, Sierra standpoint. Would like to see him give up a few less fly balls, convert a few more of those into grounders. Only 35% grounders is very low, but that's the biggest thing with Keljo. Just would like to see more grounders than fly balls.
Have you taken a peek at his conference numbers?
Yes, and they're not great.
They're not nearly as impressive as his out of conference for certain.
No, still a 3.12 Sierra.
Bad by any means, but,
no, still a 3.12 Sierra. Still walks people less than 10% of the time, 8.5. Strikes out people 4% less than he did out of conference, 27%. His ERA is up in the 6s. His WHIP is 1.7. Still giving up a ton of fly balls. It's not too many more homers, only 1% more. But you are correct in saying his conference numbers are not.
I was actually going to see. I was trying to open up their schedule to see, because my thought process was, now that they're not part of the Pac-12, he may not be playing, I guess, just such a high-level conference. Maybe he'll put a better year just because the competition's up. Apparently, if you hit the Oregon State team page on D1 Baseball, it redirects you to Louisville by default. Does it do that for you too?
Let me find out.
Yeah, on the top 25 breakdown, dude. Maybe I'm like absolutely tripping, but like
fall report on Oregon State.
No, fall report, just the Oregon State team page.
What's up?
The bottom one.
Where's the quick link? Come on now. Team news. Here we go. Yeah, that's Louisville.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I'll go ahead. I'll take a peek at some schedule, see if I can see any notable opponents.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Next guy.
But Eric Segura, their projected Sunday guy, actually, because they have a very, very good freshman coming in that I'm going to talk about. But as a freshman, 15 games started, got a ton of experience, 69 in the third innings. This is overall stats: 3.38 Sierra, 1.28 WHIP. This guy is pretty impressive. He has the starting experience. Obviously, if you look at his conference numbers, they're not quite as impressive. 9 starts, 40 in 2/3 innings. Strikeouts and walks stay about the same. 23% strikeouts, 7% walks. WHIP goes up to 1.4. Sierra goes up to 3. Actually, sorry, I misspoke. Goes down to 3.24. He is good, especially for a freshman. Not every freshman can go out there and dominate. Like an Aiden Knack. Not everybody can do that. This guy pitched very well for a freshman. Good righty arm, 6'2", 203. This guy is a very nice guy to have on your staff. Potentially to be your third best starter. Did you find their schedule?
Yeah, so I was looking, kind of going through Oregon State's schedule. They do play some tough opponents, but as far as weekends, like for instance, early on in the season, I think like next week they're going to play Virginia and Oklahoma back to back. Virginia is very, very good. Oklahoma is just on the cusp of the top 25.
Yeah.
Outside, as far as weekend series go, it looks like their toughest weekend series is either going to be Nebraska or Oregon. Nobody else. So, I mean, this guy is a pretty solid chance to put up some decent numbers, just given the fact that, I mean, the competition probably won't be as consistently solid as like, for instance, they play Cal State Fullerton one weekend. Next week they play Cal State Northridge. I'm not overly familiar with. I think Fullerton. I've
heard of Fullerton at the very least.
I think they're a solid club if I'm not mistaken. But by all means, don't take that with a barrel of salt.
It's not necessarily a weekend series in. Oh my gosh, where's Oregon? I'm forgetting the name of the city.
Corrales?
No, Oregon. Just Oregon.
Oh, Eugene.
Yeah, Eugene. Okay.
Yeah, it's Eugene.
It's not a weekend series in Eugene when you go down to play Cal State Fullerton. Now, the next... sorry, I had a last point about that. If they're not playing a high level of competition, it's obviously going to be tougher for them to host or make it to the tournament. I fully expect this team to be in regionals minimum.
Hmm.
But I feel like the selection committee might be a little tougher on them because we're going to expect them to go out there and steamroll their competition.
Yeah, the bar is higher just because relative to competition.
Yes. Any win they can pick up out of conference against, like you said, Oregon and Oklahoma, like those kind of teams, anything they can pick up there will be really, really big for them.
It's unfortunate that they run into those guys so early in the season, just because
Yes.
they may still be figuring some things out, and then later on the season, the committee may be like, "Oh, they lost to Virginia and Oklahoma. Those are two really good teams. Oh, they're not good." It would be a shame for them to be punished so heavily for some of their strongest opponents are going to play all season to be within like the first week of play. I would certainly hope that the committee wouldn't punish them like that.
Yes, and I will say, one of the major strengths of this team as a whole is they're a very experienced team. Most of their lineup, oh my gosh, most of their lineup is returning. Like, if there was a team that was going to show up day one and be really, really good, this team could be it. Like, they're not having
Really?
it. There's not a ton of transfers coming in. The one transfer that did come in, I'm going to talk about in a bit. Their one transfer in the line and projected in the lineup that is here. He's really good. Like, this team is really looking to capitalize on the level of experience they have. They have a lot of guys come into, like, quote unquote, their college primes. So, like, junior, senior year, right before they're going to leave. They're talented enough they could go to the draft potentially. This team is really, really good. But next thing I'm going to talk about is their projected left fielder, Gavin Turley. He is another swing big, miss big guy. 19 homers, 79 strikeouts. His conference numbers stay close to what he is. We're talking about 131 WRC plus out of conference, or overall 130 in conference. Strikeout numbers stay literally the same. Walks go down about a percentage point. This is a guy looking to put the ball in the air and out of the park. 53% of the time, he hits a fly ball. 23% of those go for homers. He is absolutely trying to demolish the ball whenever he can hit it. His freshman year, he actually looked a little better. He didn't play as much, so, how those stats project, I would expect something more like last year. This guy is a very, very good corner outfielder. Just looking to he hit 19 homers last year in
I mean,
289
when your
plate
down
appearances.
year is a 131 WRC plus,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
still
like,
quite impressive.
he cracked 1,000 OPS. Like, this guy is very, very good.
What? I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
No, you're
But have
good.
you
You're good.
taken a peek at his numbers at conference play for when he was a freshman?
For when he was a freshman, they were terrible.
Yeah. So
Putting
I
it
think,
simply,
you know,
bad conference numbers when he was a freshman. Very good conference numbers as a sophomore.
yeah. So
He took a
that's
massive
a big
leap.
leap in and of itself. Yeah.
Yes,
So I
absolutely
didn't mean to
massive.
interrupt you. I just don't
No,
want to.
yes,
I felt like I undersold that. I didn't want to feel like I was underselling this guy for sure. That was a big jump to make.
yeah. Though that's an absolutely massive leap to make. And you can kind of see it. He only played 18 games, 65 plate appearances as a freshman in conference play. 43% of the time he struck out, and that dropped massively to still high 27%. But yeah, no, this guy took a big leap in conference play. Really brought, which kind of speaks how nuts his numbers were out of conference his freshman year. To still put up a 151
Yeah, to
WRC
balance
plus,
that out. Yeah.
it like freaking not balance it, launch it off the other end of the seesaw. Like, that was incredible. But this is a super talented guy, clearly, and 19 homers last year, 6 stolen bases. It's a very good guy to have as a corner outfielder. Moving slightly over in the outfield to their center fielder, Dallas Masias. What I read about him is he is the glue guy of this team. He is the leader. He's got a football background. He's a more intense guy. plays hard, brings that energy to the team that you really love to have. Very good defender, good speed. Yeah, he stole 9 bases last year. 313, 388, 509, 8 homers, 113 WRC plus. Not like a necessarily super elite bat. He's the glue guy for this team. He's what takes it all, puts it all together, and leads this team to be the team they are. I mean, like I was saying earlier, center fielders, you don't necessarily expect to have a really good bat. It's kind of just a bonus. This guy has a very good bat. You look at his conference numbers, 130 WRC plus in conference play. I mean, his strikeouts dropped. His walks stayed about the same. He hit 6 of his 8 homers on the year in conference play. This guy just seems to have another gear he puts it into when the competition goes up. And that's just a really good guy to have on a team like this. And to bring more to this team. One more guy I'm going to talk about before I get to some newcomers to this team is Trent Caraway. He didn't play much last year. He was hurt. But he's a very good defender at the hot corner, which is third base for those who don't know. One thing I did read about him is he's incredibly aggressive at the plate, which is why he strikes out almost 32% of the time. He's an unconventional leadoff guy, but he is a very, very talented guy. He's going up there and trying to swing first pitch, make everything happen he can, and get in the pitcher's head. Now, does it work necessarily all the time? Clearly not.
Looking at his numbers here, to have a 431 on base percentage
and still strike out 32% of the time.
Yeah, granted, he only had 72 plate appearances last year. Not the biggest sample size in the world. He hit 6 walks on the year last year. So to have a 339 average to 431 on base, that's peculiar.
It's interesting. I think he might have reached on some errors, some fielder's choices potentially, but he's just an interesting guy that I wanted to bring up. That with him being back from injury, could be a very important part of this team. Getting into some newcomers, I'm going to start with freshman Dax Whitney. This kid is from Blackfoot, Idaho. He is a pitcher, and he's their projected Saturday guy, according to D1 Baseball, as a true freshman. He's never pitched in college ball. He's pretty good. In, May of 24, he was throwing 95 as a 18-year-old. Oh, yeah. He's currently 19, so yeah, about 18 years old. He's throwing 95. Very impressive. He was the number 9 righty in the nation, number 43 prospect overall. If we go over here, I'm just going to read a little expert about him from Baseball Prospect Journal. They had a really good article about him, but this is just one thing I wanted to bring up. I'm quoting. Whitney is a 6'5", 195-pound right-handed pitcher who throws a 4-seam fastball, curveball, slider, and changeup from a short, quick arm action, over the top arm slot, and athletic delivery. His delivery also creates plenty of deception. He commands his fastball well. It generates swing and miss. It's mid to high 90s. His curveball's at 12.6. It's high 70s. He can put it in. He can throw it for a strike. He can also use it for a strikeout. His slider is his real strikeout pitch. It's a big sweeper. It's 84, 80s, mid 80s slider. This dude probably could have gone to the draft. He actually was not drafted, which is a little surprising to me. He's, from what I read, one of the best prospects Idaho has ever produced as a state. If he actually comes in and produces at the level of the Oregon State Saturday starter, I'd be a little surprised just because he's a freshman. I don't expect him to come in and be really, really good. I mean, this is like projecting a transfer that played one game. Like, it's really, really hard to project how that kind of stuff will play. But 6'5", 4-pitch mix. 3 of them he could throw for strikes. I believe they said he could throw the changeup for strikes as well. He's slider to righties, curveball to anybody, changeup to. This dude's really, really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's just 19. Like, he's a very, very exciting guy. I'm definitely going to be keeping. I'm going to keep it. I just want to watch Oregon State in general, see how everything works out for them. But he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on for them. If I look, I thought I had the top 150 pitchers pulled up. Goodness, forgive me. I believe he was listed on there. Yeah, Dax Whitney. He's right at number 70 with the Oklahoma State guys, Wake Forest, Duncan Marston. He's not far below Matthew Dallas and Andrew Healy, 2 guys we talked about last time. This dude is projected to be one of the better freshman pitchers in college ball. He's very, very impressive. Next guy I want to get into is their JUCO transfer, Ethan Kleinschmidt from Lynn Benton Community College, or JUCO. Started 13 games, pitched 78 in the 3rd innings, which was about 6 innings to start, which is very nice.
Oh, so you went for some length there.
Yeah. His most interesting stats, 103 ERA, 0.7 whip, and like I said, 78 in the 3rd innings, 120 strikeouts. Only 16 walks.
Okay.
Yeah. His Ks per 9. Take a guess at Ks per 9, which is strikeouts per 9 innings pitched.
You said 120?
120 in 78 in the 3rd, so you could do the math if you really wanted to. But
yeah, I'll just go like it's 13, 14, somewhere in the ballpark.
13.79.
Oh, man, I'm just that good.
On that. But
no biggie.
His strikeouts per 9 actually go up in conference play to 14. 55 and 2/3 innings in 9 starts. He somehow lost a game.
Oh, that's got to be lack of run support at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he had a complete game in there, which again speaks to the length that he can get. This dude's he's just demolishing JUCO guys. Or not JUCO, community college, sorry. It's just eye-popping numbers. Again, who knows how it will project. Absolutely eye-popping numbers.
If I had to guess here, I think that's a tremendous get. I think that from an Oregon State perspective, I was an Oregon State fan, I would be relieved to know that this guy like this on the roster when I have Dax Whitney projected as the Saturday guy. Because JUCO, a lot of times, it's skills and talent, they can translate pretty dang well between
for sure.
JUCO. Obviously, they're not going to put up the same numbers and such, but it's not like you're playing chump ball. Like it's not like they went out and picked a bunch of middle schoolers to play against. Like, you're still playing against high level of competition. If you've got stuff, you've got stuff, plain and simple. If I'm an Oregon State fan, I feel a lot better knowing that this guy is an option to be a starter for us when Dax Whitney, because like I said, Duncan just said, Dax Whitney's a tremendous talent by all means. I'm not saying Dax Whitney's going to be terrible or anything. It's just the fear of the unknown, of
for sure.
How well is he going to translate into a collegiate pitcher from day one and trusted to go out there and get a win every single Saturday? It's a big question. Some guys step up, some guys don't. It's not good, it's not bad. Some guys just need a little bit extra time. But knowing that they have a guy who, with such elite numbers, with the stamina that they have, that's a big pickup for sure. Absolutely.
I was trying to look for a little player profile. That's exactly what I was looking for. What? I clicked on his player profile and it immediately pulled up their basketball team. For Lynn Benton.
No, straight to Louisville.
He did not play basketball. I don't know why it did that. I was looking for how tall is he? But it's not here.
Play on the basketball team,
he was not on the basketball team. I don't believe.
This is outrageous.
It just pulled up their sports page. But either way, like Luke said, having a guy like that to kind of back up Whitney and give him that support system of like, hey, if you don't play super well, we have another guy that can step up. You can slot into the midweeks, get your experience. We're not gonna have to rely on you necessarily to be our Saturday guy all the time. He can go out there and play. The last person I want to talk about for Oregon State, the previously mentioned belle of the transfer ball, according to D1 Baseball, is shortstop Iva Arquette from Washington.
Is that how you say that? You're a
I
braver
looked
man
it
than
up.
me.
It's Iva Arquette.
You are a braver man than me. I was just
I while you were talking about JUCO stuff, as soon as I realized what your point you're making, I looked up his pronunciation and heard it said it's Iva Arquette.
I tried to do that with a few of my guys, and I'm still so nervous. I get so nervous I mispronounce it, even though I listened to him say it like 5 times.
Yeah. I almost was gonna say Ava, but it is Iva Arquette. This guy played second base for Washington last year, majority of the time. He projects at shortstop for the Beavs. This is such a hard thing to guess. What do you think? How do you think he's built? Second baseman, projected for shortstop. Good bat.
Given that you're asking me this, I'm imagining he's not going to be your standard 5'11", 185-pound guy. He's probably like 6'6", like 220.
He's 6'5", 220.
Dude, I am new.
You're on fire today, man.
Dude, somebody take me to a casino now.
6'5", 220. This dude is nuts. He's a very good defender in the middle of the infield. Obviously, he wouldn't be playing shortstop if he wasn't. For Washington last year in the pack, overall, I'm going to start there. 325, 384, 574, 958 OPS, 124 WRC plus, hit 12 homers, stole 6 bases at 6'5". Struck out 17% of the time, walked 7% of the time. Another guy trying to put the ball and play more, but the strikeouts are below 20%, which is always a good thing. His batted ball profile isn't crazy interesting. Hits 44% ground balls, 38% fly balls, 17% line drives. 18% of his fly balls go for homers. As a DH, only in 15 games, 56 plate appearances as a freshman, he hit 5 homers. So 55% of his fly balls went for homers as a freshman. Tiny sample size. But if we look at his conference play, I should mention 124 WRC plus. We look at his conference numbers, 129 WRC plus. 321, 382, 611. 10 of his 12 homers came in conference play. Strikeouts went down a little. Walks also went up a tiny bit. His home runs per fly ball obviously jumped up a ton. 25% of his homers or fly balls went for homers. I mean, you talk about a 6'5", 220 elite defender, good bat. Oh my gosh, you could see why probably every team in the nation wanted this guy.
Oh, for sure.
And
he doesn't grow on trees, to say the least.
No, he is the tree. But like, oh my goodness, and he stayed consistent in conference play. But part of what I wanted to talk about with him is how much him being one of the most touted transfers in college ball, he went to Oregon State. I think that really speaks to this program and how good this program is and how much guys still have faith in it despite the Pac-12 being disbanded or essentially disbanded. Like, this program still puts together very talented rosters every year. They go out and they get the best, and that's part of why I'm very excited about this team. One transfer in the lineup, and it's Iva Arquette. I mean, I know Caraway didn't play much. Easton Talt didn't play much. Tice Peterson didn't play much. A couple guys under 150 plate appearances. I just look at it and I go, it's Oregon State. It's going to work. I mean, 7 straight regional appearances. Obviously, they want more. They want to go back to Omaha. I mean, like I said, last time they were there, they won it all. This is just a talented team with experience. I mean, only one senior in the lineup. It's their catcher, Wilson Weber. I don't know. Something about this team to me just screams experience, and they're going to just show up and play well. Um, Obviously, to lose a guy like Bazana is really, really tough. You basically replace him with Iva Arquette and Jabin Trotsky. Jabin Trotsky. I have no clue how to say that name.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a really good team. And yes, there are questions. Will Keljo be able to be a consistent Friday guy? Will Dax Whitney work out? Eric Segura, will he be able to capitalize on his potential? Will Kleinschmidt's numbers transfer over? Will the guys that have less experience, that didn't have the plate appearances that the other guys had, be able to work out? Yes, this is a very righty-heavy lineup. Only 2 lefties in it. Maybe if they face a really good righty like a Tyler Bremner, it could be a problem for them. I think Bremner would be a problem for anybody, but it could be a bigger problem for such a righty-heavy lineup. Yes, there are questions. This team just looks good. I go back to what we were saying about transfers. You get a guy like Arquette, and also Kleinschmidt doesn't necessarily have to be incredible. It's the opposite side of the same coin for him and Whitney. If one of them ends up being really, really good and the other one struggles, the other one's still good. I really doubt both of them are going to struggle.
Yeah.
And even if they struggle, I don't think it'll be for very long. These are 2 guys that are very, very talented pitchers. And yeah, they've shown that they can both pitch. Well, Kleinschmidt has shown that he can pitch for length at the community college level. Whitney has a 4-pitch mix that he can all throw for strikes as a true freshman. I like this team a lot.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's about all I had for them.
Pretty much all you have?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, we'll go ahead and get into UNC. Now, UNC, when I was making that list of teams that I was really excited about, UNC was that mystery team that I had not mentioned from there. Oh, don't tell me. This can't be.
Uh-oh.
I thought I lost it. Like I said, my tabs got all messed up, and I thought I lost it.
I was about to say, if you need me to ramble for 10 minutes, I'm sure I can.
Yeah, I was curious. I need some screeching. So, anyways, UNC is a team that I am very, very excited to cover. So, just going to a little bit about last year. So, last year I finished 48-16, 22-8 in conference. So, very impressive. They're coached by Mr. Scott Forbes, and he's been there for about 4 seasons. And last year, they ended up losing in the College World Series to Florida State. So, made a run to Omaha. Obviously, that's a pretty decent run for any team in the country. Every team wants to win in such, but making it to Omaha, nothing to sneeze at for sure. The thing that I look at this team, and a lot of teams that we looked at, is we immediately see some level of weakness or whatever. I really don't know where that's at on this team. This is probably, as far as the teams I've covered, probably one of the most balanced teams that we have. They've got really good bats. They've got really good pitchers. They got really good bullpen. I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking at this team, and you just sit there, all right, draw me up a game plan of how to beat North Carolina. Well, if you ask me the same question about Oregon State, okay, let me put on my righty. Let me put on my best righty pitcher and let him run. He's going to fight all those. These guys right here, I don't know. I just don't know. So, getting into it, last year, for frame of reference, they led the ACC in ERA at 4.3. And, yes, they did lose some guys. They lost Dalton Pence out of the bullpen. They lost Shea Sprague. They lost them. However, they're also returning a ton of the talent from that bullpen, from that rotation. So I don't think it would be crazy to see them put up similar ERA numbers, saying like, "Hey, this could be one of the better pitching teams that we have available." And it's almost kind of like a similar thing. So they lost pretty much their whole outfield is comprised of nothing but transfers.
Yeah.
So they lost Vance Honeycutt, one of the best players in program history. That's definitely the biggest loss they suffered in the outfield. And so I guess North Carolina was left with the option. They looked it up and down their team, and they said, "Man, I just we seem to be lacking a little bit of home runs, a little bit of power and such." They said, "All right, let's go out and get some transfers. You're going to hit for power." That's exactly what they did. So, for instance, Tyson
Wow.
Bass, who played, he just transferred in. He hit 22 homers last year. Sam Angelo hit 18 homers last year. So it seemed like they recognized that this team, like they could really use some juice on their bats, and that's exactly what they did. They just went out and got some guys who can hit the long ball.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah, go
best
ahead.
part of this team, oh, what were we gonna say?
I mean, I was just gonna say Bass and Angelo. I mean, Bass slugged 755 and Angelo slugged 896.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, North Carolina Wesleyan and Montclair State, uh, still absolutely insane numbers. Go ahead.
Oh, for sure. But the one thing is with this squad that really jumps out to me, that really speaks to them, the reason why I'm really harping on them so much is, Duncan, if you would kindly look over if their walks to strikeouts.
Oh, I noticed immediately. I mean,
In,
three
yeah,
transfers with either more walks than strikeouts or the same. I mean, I'm sure you're going to mention him, but Kane Capley at Liberty, 53 walks for 27 strikeouts.
yes.
That's 25 stolen bases. Also, Tyson Bass, I didn't even notice, stole 31 bases and slugged 755. Who is this kid?
Dude, I'm telling and so that's the thing, is everyone on this team, with the exception of their third baseman, Gavin Gallagher, they all almost have a 1-to-1 walk to strikeout ratio. So
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much every
nuts.
time that they're striking out, they're also drawing a walk. That to
That's
me is
beautiful.
one of the best signs of like just pure plate discipline. Like
Yeah.
that is a team that you sit there and that's what I'm saying. Draw up a game plan of how to beat North Carolina. I would struggle. I
You have to
certainly
be
would struggle.
perfect.
Yeah, because you're not going to strike the guys out. Because if you, all right, every time you strike them out, get ready for a walk. So
Yeah.
it's insane. They got guys who hit for contact. They guys for power. I mean, this is truthfully one of the most well balanced teams that we've had. And I will say this too, I tend to agree with D1 Baseball's ranking of them at 6 more than I agree with the Baseball Americas them at 12. I think,
12?
yeah, I was
Hold
terribly
up.
surprised when I saw that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'm about to pull
No,
it up.
that's all I had to say. Yeah, continue, please.
Well, no, I'm pulling up Baseball America's preseason top 25, just because
Yeah, no,
who is over
it,
them?
and actually, I think believe Georgia was number 11. Like the two
Really?
teams that I got, D1 Baseball and Baseball America, very much disagreed. I was a little shocked because
Wow.
I'm personally very big on these guys. Just looking at these numbers, I
Yeah,
mean, this
those.
is
Wow.
ridiculous. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, we'll get into a little bit of it. So one of the transfers they got in from Liberty, Kane Kepley, right? This guy, he has a fantastic walk to strikeout ratio here of 53 walks to 27 strikeouts. I mean, that is tremendous. And especially, like, I can't even articulate how much value that brings to it. And just to put a little splash line too, maybe you're just like, hey, this guy maybe just doesn't have the best bat in the world. No, I mean, batted 330, on base 482, slug 521. I mean, the guy has a coin flip of whether he gets on base. He's batting well above 300. He's hitting for some decent power. And on top of that, to be able to go out there and steal 25 bases. So not only the ability to get on base half the time, but the ability to almost immediately put yourself into scoring position. I would absolutely love to pull up his stats, but on his individual page. However, D1 Baseball is not letting me. Um,
For Kepler?
for some reason, his page will not pull up for me,
I'll pull
but
up
that's
some stuff
okay.
for him.
Yeah. So I just that was eye popping to say the least when I saw that. I mean, just tremendous value. He had 285 plate appearances. It's not like he did this in 10, 15, 20 plate appearances. I mean, this is a big sample size. So a lefty out in center field. I mean, obviously he's got some speed on him. I haven't heard much about his defense, mostly because everyone's been talking about how just productive he is on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he's actually a little dude. He's 5'8", 165. Like
Oh,
usually
I
think
did read. That's why I saw you had 9
Yeah.
homers. I was like, man,
Yeah.
you know.
I usually don't think of like corner outfielders as like smaller players. That'd be like you said, second base. But hey, what did you want to know about his stats?
Oh, you just see anything that pops up? Like I said, I couldn't particularly pull it up
I
for some reason.
mean,
It would just blank out whenever I had. Is there anything else I really missed? Or
I don't think so. I mean, like you said, he got hit by pitches 12 times. Like, as a fielder, I have fielding statistics for once. 99%, 133 out of 137, it looks like. Like, yeah. I mean, outfield assists, he only had 3 assists, so it's not necessarily a big arm, it looks like. But one error on the year. Yeah, he's
yeah, for
pretty
sure.
dang good.
So yeah, and just to kind of talk about Tyson Bass, another tremendous transfer. He's more of the same, except just exceptional power. So slash of 358, on base of 461, slug 755, hit 22 homers and stole 31 bases. I mean, just absolutely more of the same.
Who is this guy? Hold up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the transfers they brought in, kind of they have just almost jaw dropping numbers. I don't mean to
Six
I don't
three
mean to
two oh
really keep
five.
harping on it, but yeah,
6'3", 205 with 30 stolen bases.
no, that's preposterous. That
Sheesh.
truthfully is preposterous. Let me go ahead and pull up his individual.
I got
Pro-
some stuff
yeah,
pulled
let
up.
me see if I missed anything else from there.
He at one in against Immaculata had 4 doubles in a game. He's also or no. Oh my god, I read that wrong. 4 hits. He's had 2 doubles in a game. He's had 2 triples in a game. He's stolen 4 bases in a game.
Wow. See, okay, man, this is frustrating. I can't seem to get most of the North Carolina players to pull up, even though I have them up earlier.
He's he's UNC Wesleyan, so that might be why. I have
Perhaps
their
that's why.
actual page for him pulled up. I mean, like I said, 369. He attempted 34 stolen bases. He was only caught 3 times, so less than 10% of the time he's getting caught. In terms of fielding percentage, 97% fielder ish. 3 errors all year. I mean, 4 assists from the outfield. So again, not necessarily a big arm, but yeah, 20 something homers, 30 something stolen bases. That's wild.
Yeah. So, and just kind of round out their transfers. Sam Angelo, he was a Division III, I think the first team All American. Video game numbers here: 436 batting average, 520 on base, 896 slug with 18 homers. Um, I mean, just silly, just truthfully silly.
1416
He,
OPS.
yeah, that's
Silly.
so. The guys that brought in, like we said, they're coming in from maybe not as high of a level, but they address the exact needs of this team. They address this because if you look at a lot of the other guys that are returning, the power may not necessarily be there. So that's exactly what they went out and got. So, anyways, I'll continue on with somebody who was there last year, Luke Stevenson, the catcher. He was a freshman last year. He batted 284 with 420 on base percentage, 535 slug with 14 homers as a freshman.
Sure.
Um, and so whenever you sit there and you say, this guy had 14 homers overall, maybe they came outside. No. 10 of those homers came in conference play.
Sure.
So it seemed like
That's
during conference play, he really his batting average took a pretty decent hit down to 235. However, it seemed like that his slugging and home runs just shot up. So it seemed like more he was a swing big, miss big kind of guy during conference play. And once again, he just a fly ball heavy kind of guy. 57% of his shots in conference play went for home run or for fly balls and home runs.
Whew, that
Yeah,
would be
so
something.
yeah, no
That's
kidding.
Charlie Condon.
That's about to say, yeah, Charlie Condon on a bad day. So and on top of all of these offensive numbers, he's got an elite defense for it. This is a guy that they're going to lean on heavily, especially in such a pivotal position like catcher. I expect him to take a fairly big jump into this year, really establish himself as kind of a leader on this team, both offensively and in the clubhouse. I don't know. I'm expecting big things out of this kid for sure, absolutely for sure.
Oh yeah, He looks very impressive.
Yeah, and like I said, definitely one of the better catchers in the country. Expecting a big year. So, but just another guy I'll touch on quickly. I don't want to touch on too many other guys, but I'm just so impressed by so many of them. It's Gavin Gallagher.
Mm-hmm.
As a freshman, he went 314 batting average, 392 on base, 491 slug. If you take a look into conference play, let me see here. He wasn't his WRC plus. He's actually a below average league batter in
Really?
conference play. Yeah, which is a little surprising. I think it's mainly could just be because he struck out a lot compared to how much he walked.
Mm.
Either way, pretty dang impressive numbers. He puts up similar ones both in conference play and overall. So I would also expect another pretty solid year. Hopefully, take a pretty big jump because, like I said, this guy was a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
If he could just get a little more juice in that bat and maybe walk a touch more, he would be something serious.
Mm-hmm.
To get to the rotation kind of guy. So we're gonna go with their starting pitcher, Jason DeCaro. 381 ERA and 90.1 innings pitched as a 17-year-old freshman.
He is number 5 on D1 Baseball's top 100 pitchers. When I talked about Aiden Knack, he's the other guy that him and Gabe. Again, I'm gonna look this up when I talk about Arkansas. Gackle, I don't know. They're the 3 freshmen right there, or sophomores, that were incredible. Yeah, Jason DeCaro is very good. When you're talking about, oh yeah, how to beat Oregon State, I might throw my best righty out there. He's it.
Oh yeah, this would be almost a nightmare matchup for a team like Oregon.
Yeah.
And not only that, I think for him to be a 17, 18-year-old kind of guy, to also go out into conference and put up virtually identical numbers. It's not like this guy was just feasting on a bunch of no names. Granted, I mean, he had 10 starts, 53 innings pitched, so about 5 innings per start and such. So he got
5 and a third, yeah.
like he had decent depth into games and such. It's not like
Yeah,
he put up
for
these
sure.
numbers in 2 innings in conference play.
Mm-hmm.
So, and overall, his batted ball profile, he's pretty balanced. He generates a decent amount of ground balls, pretty low amount of line drives, decent amount of fly balls. I mean, it's not like he doesn't seem like he has a specialty by any means from that
Mm-hmm.
end. He doesn't really have an elite K rate. If you look at his K rate, it's only 20%.
Really?
So if you kind of look at
He does
that compared to some of the other guys we talked about, it's not necessarily an elite K rate. He walks guys a good amount too, 11%, relative to his K rate, of course. But he gets guys out, and at the end of the day, that's what's most important, is that he's finding a way to generate some outs.
What's his left
Sierra
on
isn't.
base? Oh, sorry, yeah.
That's exactly what I say. 85.85.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
to me, that really, and even in conference, 84.84.
Oh, yeah.
It really kind of, to me, shows that kind of an elite composure at such a young age. And it shows that guys probably aren't getting into scoring position nearly as much on this guy because to me, when I sit there and think of left on base, they're probably sitting on first, maybe second whenever he gets the last guy out. So I don't know. I'm just sitting there thinking very, very impressive numbers.
Especially for a
the
freshman.
age of this guy.
Yeah.
He's definitely a great guy. You feel good about this guy coming out onto a Friday, coming into his sophomore year.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I believe the last player I have a note right here is Matthew Matthias. And I made sure to watch this up. I actually looked up his Little League World Series
Really?
highlights. Yes. So apparently he pitched a few gems in the Little League World Series, and that is how I learned to pronounce his name. Fun facts. So across 58 innings of work last year, he had a 3.72 ERA. So pretty respectable numbers, especially like we said, once you consider the fact that he didn't start any games. He had 36 appearances. So like we said, we don't really like to use ERA a ton to evaluate relievers and such, just because it can get inflated really easily. However, Sierra seems to agree with that overall ERA. Sierra sitting at 3.52, so virtually identical.
Yeah.
D1 Baseball loves this guy. Oh, keep going.
I was just gonna say real quick about ERA for relievers. If their ERA is high, I take it with a grain of salt. If their ERA is low, or like 3.72 isn't necessarily like super low, I'm more impressed than I would be for a guy who started a ton of games because he didn't pitch as
Oh,
much. But yeah,
yeah, it all goes down to sample size.
go right ahead.
Yeah, so anyways, he's ranked as the third best reliever in D1 baseball. So not only do these guys have one of the best Friday guys, they also have one of the best relievers in the back end of their bullpen. And that just really goes back to show you, it's like, dude, how do you beat this team?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I truthfully don't know. Um, One of the biggest jumps that I have here, right? So from his freshman to sophomore year, freshman year, he had a 16.1% walk percentage. To his sophomore year, 7.5%. He cut it in half while maintaining a very similar strikeout rate.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and his numbers across the board, he took a tremendous step from that year to
Mm-hmm.
last year. I mean, just his numbers across the board really just they stepped up everywhere. There's literally I can't see anywhere I'm looking at on here where his numbers went down at all. He took a big step. If he can maintain this rate or even progress even a little bit more, this is going to be one of the best relievers in the country, hands down.
Oh.
And I think his only knock on him really is his left on base percentage. He's 67.7% left on base percentage, which, like you said, maybe the guys just don't get on base versus him very often or something. But I don't know. I would certainly like to see that number go up, especially for somebody who may be projected for the back end of my bullpen.
Yeah, I think Bremner's wasn't super high, if I'm remembering back. I think
Yeah,
it
I
might
think
just
you're
be
right.
one of the things like we talked about before of like they just don't really get on base. So it's like it's a
Mm-hmm.
really small sample and maybe
Mm-hmm.
like just 3 guys scored on him from second and you gave it like a homer or two. Like that might be lower than what actually happened, but it's probably just, super small sample size and because not many guys got on ever, and he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for a reliever, 36 appearances, 58 innings. That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. I think honestly, 58 innings is a lot of work in itself, but 36 appearances
36
is also
appearances
a
is
lot.
nuts. And he's
Yeah,
going out there and pitching
that's a
like
ton.
2 innings sometimes. Like he must have
Mm,
pitched. That's what half their games, like more than.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
he pitched a
jeez.
ton.
Yeah.
So this is a great guy to have. This is somebody
Oh
you want to
yeah.
have at anywhere in your bullpen, anywhere in your rotation, anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, those are all the players I really had of note. I really wanted to talk about each of these players for 30 minutes just because I think so many of
Yeah.
them are impressive.
We
So
totally could.
I I don't know. This is one of the teams I'm very high on, and I was shocked to see Baseball America didn't share my opinion on them. However, like I said, maybe I'm missing something.
Going back
But
to
this
those
this is a
Baseball
team.
America rankings,
Hmm.
they're higher on Duke and they're higher on Clemson. So I think that's essentially what happened. And then they're also higher on Florida State and Florida. Um, so they have 3 other teams in the ACC above this team. Now, do I agree with that? Not necessarily. I'm more tempted to lean towards the D1 baseball rankings. Um, like I said, UNC, the guys they brought in are super impressive. The guys they're returning are super impressive. With Florida State's questions as far as their rotation goes past Arnold, um, and with Clemson, like a bunch of transfers. Obviously, Aiden Knack is there. Um, I would lean UNC, but all these teams are very close together. Like one of one of my favorite podcasts out there. I'm going to shout them out. It matters not for them, but Thinking Basketball. You may have seen some of their work if you follow the NBA. They do very good breakdowns, but they always talk about ranges for players and teams. So when we're talking about a team being a top 15 team, it's not necessarily that they are exactly 15. The range may be anywhere from 13 to 18, and that's like that group of teams. As we get closer to the top, there's a smaller and smaller group of teams that like barring injuries, barring any major changes, like you talk about like your inner circle of teams that could go out and win the College World Series. There's maybe only 3 teams that I would look at and go, I really, really believe in you to go out and just dominate. And that's just how talented those teams are. But when you talk about a UNC, it's like maybe agreeing with their range is somewhere between like 5 to 12, somewhere in there. And that's something I would actually be interested in working on with you as far as like when we talk about next week, recap of what happened this last week and maybe looking forward what's our top 25. That might be something we could look at. I'm not saying we're going to do it. I just like ranking things. But
tier
list. Yeah, essentially like a tier list. Like we're talking about like there's these S tier teams that are just incredible, but the A tier teams aren't bad. They're just not as good as these other teams. They're very, very close together. I think a lot of these teams are very, very close together, and it's the little things that will set them apart. It's not necessarily the big picture.
I think the margin between probably number 5 and number 12, it's got to be splitting hairs at some point for sure. So it's kind of like Josh Pate, what he always says about college football. He's like one through 2 or 3. It's like the gap between those is the same as the gap between like 4 and
like 20.
Like I don't know, like 12, 15 or something.
Like
it's one of those things that like sometimes these teams are just so incredibly close. You got split absolute hairs to show, and I think that
absolutely
shows that. Like I don't know, it's just one of those things that the order of these rankings really could go any type of way, and you'd be like, oh, that's fair enough. Once it hits a certain
for
range.
Sure. I mean, I'm always gonna lean like we were saying about transfers. I'm always gonna lean to the side of more information than less. If I have more information about a player than another player, and their stats are like, even if the guy I have way less information on, if his stats look really good, but the other guy's played for 3 years and is consistently this level, I'm gonna lean to the guy that's just more. I like consistency. I like more of a known commodity than not. And that goes into my evaluation of teams is like hey, I might be high on this team. I might not be so high on this other one. Now, again, like you said in I think either the first or second episode, baseball's not played on paper. We go out there, you actually play the games for a reason. Because, spoiler alert for next episode, if the games were played on paper, Texas A&M is running away with it.
100%.
It's not close. They're incredibly talented. Like, maybe a couple other teams could really rival them. A couple of these teams are just going to absolutely run away with it. And that's no fun because we don't actually get to see anything. It's just like, oh, yeah, we project this team like this, so they are this. That's not true at all.
Yeah,
now,
of course.
Like I said, the ranges of teams, like I could see some teams' ranges are just way bigger than others. So, like, you got the top teams that have really narrow ranges. You have some of the, like, when we're talking about bottom, I'm talking about way down. Their ranges aren't that big. There's just not much room for them to go up. And there's really not much room for the top teams to fall, barring, like, major injuries. Teams like a Mississippi State, like an NC State, like a Clemson, like a UNC, that are transferring in a good bit of guys. Some of the other guys that they're returning. I know as far as state goes, the returning pitching we're getting, I like the guys, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to play really well. Our range as a team is pretty big. We could either be really, really good, or we could be pretty dang bad. Now, would I love to lean on the high side of that? Yeah, but the range is just bigger for a lot of teams that are returning less talent. And like I was saying about Oregon State, I think their range is a little tighter in terms of, I don't think there's as much room for them to fall just because of their experience, because they're returning so many guys they've experienced. But, I mean, UNC, they have a little bit of both. I mean, you even look at Vanderbrake. I was taking a peek at him, or not Vanderbrake, Hunter Stokely.
Yeah.
That's a
He
guy. Even though he only had
he
4
has
plate
experience.
appearances,
He
he's a
just
ton
dealt
of
with
experience.
injuries last year.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
and
was
when he was
and same
there,
thing
he
with
was a good player.
Vandenbrink.
Yeah,
Same thing. Exact same thing with Vandenbrink is that if you look at his plate appearances compared to the first year, I mean, he put up it's a night and day numbers. It just
yeah,
was really it seems like an issue of availability for last year.
yeah, and I
So
mean,
I don't think there's really a weakness in this lineup.
yeah, no, and
I don't
that's
get it.
another thing. We're talking about the range of a team. I would say UNC, their range is 6 is pretty high. For any team, 6 is really fucking good, but there's less room for them to move down. I would think because they have
Their
so much
floor is a
talent.
lot
Their
higher.
floor's higher, and their ceiling is higher. Now, a ceiling of 6 is you're a elite team, you're winning a super regional, you're making it to Omaha. That's the expectations for a team at 6. A team in the top 15, the expectation is you're probably hosting a regional. You're not necessarily making it out of supers, but you're playing in supers. But yeah, I mean, this is a conversation for another time. We're getting pretty deep in there, but this is something I'm probably going to bring up all year in terms of ranges, because it's really hard to nail down a spot for a guy or a team. But a range is like, hey, there's these teams that are around similar talent levels, around similar experience levels, some combination of those two. This is where I think they fit somewhere in there.
Yeah,
And that's still hard to do because injuries exist and breakouts
100%.
exist. But yeah,
So.
You got anything else on UNC before I take over?
No, I mean, like you said, this is a team I was blown away with. So
Yeah.
I think I've said pretty much all I can say about them. I'm definitely this is the team I've been most excited to research thus far. I'm sure that might change for the top 5. But yeah, as of right now, I'm just blown away. This is a team I have extraordinarily high expectations for. I mean, I don't want to say Omaha or bust. However, this is a team that I am very much expecting to be at least hosting a super regional, barring any type of serious injuries or any other disruptions to this squad. I mean, I don't see any valid reason as to why not. So I don't know.
That I feel like sometimes with these teams, it's easier to ask why not, and if there's not a good why not, it's okay. This is very good.
So,
all right.
yeah,
well, in that case, I'm trying to think what we say as an outro.
Thank you guys so much
yes,
for watching.
thank you for watching.
Ian, let us know in the comments. Obviously, we are not experienced journalists, baseball journalists, media personalities, and in fact, we barely have personalities. So,
yeah, this is so. I will say, keep in mind, this is not our full-time job. So if we miss something, if you think we were wrong about something, please let us know. Constructive criticism is always better, but if you just are mad about what we said about your team, that's fine. Let us know. We'll try to have a legitimate discussion about it. We're not big enough to not reply to comments at this point. We've got enough time on our hands, even though this isn't necessarily a full-time job. But, we always talk about stuff. If I wasn't hiring your team, let me tell you right now, that doesn't mean anything. If Luke,
let me tell you right now, that means he hates your team's guts and he hopes that they fail and tear down the stadium.
That is not true at all, but that's
precisely what he means. Don't listen to him.
But
trying to save his image.
Yeah, if you got anything for us, any tips on anything, podcasting wise, anything that you know about, because beyond Mississippi State, if this is your team, you probably know more than we do. So if you got any insider info on your team, please let us know. We're always grateful for that kind of information. Moving forward, we're going to be doing one more episode of our preseason preview with the top 5. And then we're going to be really getting into the nitty gritty of the season. The season starts tomorrow. So we were cutting it real close, but we're going to make it happen.
For sure. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you for watching.